Tonight we enter a quiet museum room where a broken clay tablet rests beneath pale conservation lights. Its surface is smaller than a modern book, yet its surviving signs describe a guarded passage beneath the inhabited world, and scholars recognize the story by comparing scattered copies recovered from ancient Mesopotamian cities. Some fragments now rest in the British Museum, while others belong to collections shaped by excavations at Nipper. Researchers connected repeated lines, damaged phrases, and matching wedge patterns until a lost journey slowly returned. What emerged was not simply a tale about death. It was a description of an entrance, a keeper, and a realm separated from ordinary life by strict laws. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You may also share your location and local time below, somewhere. Another listener is entering this dim museum with you. The room smells faintly of paper as dry stone, and the cotton gloves used by conservators. Glass cases reflect soft pools of light across polished floors. Beyond them, the city continues with traffic, glowing windows, and people checking messages they will forget tomorrow. Here, time behaves differently. You lean closer to the clay. The tablet does not look especially commanding. It possesses none of the golden brilliance expected from a royal treasure. There are no gemstones, painted figures, or heroic faces staring proudly toward eternity. It is brown, cracked, and uneven, like earth hardened beside a forgotten riverbank. Ancient history can be rather inconsiderate that way. It often hides its strangest ideas inside objects resembling salivate biscuits. Across the surface, wedge-shaped impressions march in careful rows. A reed stylus formed each sign while the clay remained soft enough to receive pressure. Sumerian scribes used this method for accounts, hymns, legal decisions, school exercises, and stories about the divine world. Records confirm that Nipper produced an extraordinary concentration of literary tablets. Excavations connected with the University of Pennsylvania uncovered thousands of written fragments there, many linked with scribal training. That ordinary educational setting matters. The underworld story was not preserved inside a secret chamber surrounded by traps. Copies appeared among materials belonging to scribes, students, temples, and learned households. Someone had to prepare the clay, smooth its surface, and press every complicated sign by hand. Someone else probably copied the same lines, made mistakes, erased them, and began again. The mysterious gate survived partly because ancient students practiced their lessons. You can almost hear them nearby. Sandals scrape against packed earth. A teacher clears his throat with professional disappointment. A nervous pupil studies a line that refuses to fit neatly upon the tablet. Outside, heat gathers against mud brick walls, while irrigation water moves through narrow channels. The story passes between generations this way. Modern scholars rarely discover such compositions as complete and perfect objects. Clay breaks easily, especially when buildings collapse. Shelves fall, and cities endure centuries of rebuilding. One fragment may preserve the beginning of a sentence, another may contain its ending, copied by a different hand in another settlement, a third may repeat the passage with altered spelling or missing words. Reconstruction therefore resembles listening to several damaged recordings of the same distant voice. One copy becomes saddened where another speaks. A broken phrase gains meaning when a parallel version supplies the missing signs. The process demands grammar, patience, and the willingness to spend years examining marks smaller than fingernails. It is slow work. Oxford scholars assembled surviving versions into a composite text, allowing the ancient narrative to be read more fully. The British Museum preserves an old Babylonian fragment belonging to this literary tradition. Penn Museum collections contain vast numbers of Sumerian tablets, including works recovered from the scribal world of Nippur. Together, such pieces reveal how widely the story circulated among educated Mesopotamians. Yet calling it one tablet remains convenient rather than exact. The hidden gate reaches you through a family of damaged witnesses. Each fragment remembers something, none remembers everything. That uncertainty deepens the atmosphere surrounding the text. A clean modern page offers confidence, margins, punctuation, and a satisfying sense of control. Broken clay offers gaps. Words vanish where the surface has flaked away. Entire lines disappear beneath fractures created by fire, pressure, careless handling, or simple time. Your eyes begin supplying possibilities. A missing sign might name a place, an action, or a divine command. A damaged line may transform a physical doorway into a symbolic boundary. Translators must choose carefully, because one restored word can alter the feeling of an entire passage. Specialists still debate whether some underworld descriptions represent imagined geography, ritual language, political symbolism, or several meanings woven together. The ancient scribes provide no helpful footnotes. Apparently, they assume their audience already understood dangerous parts. One persistent fringe idea claims certain underworld tablets were deliberately shattered to prevent their words from opening spiritual passages. Archaeology offers no convincing evidence for this belief. Most damage has far more ordinary explanations, including collapsed buildings and rough journeys through the antiquities trade. Still, the suggestion lingers because broken objects invite stories about deliberate silence. Perhaps people dislike accidental loss. Purposeful fracture feels easier to understand than centuries of neglect. Under the conservation lamp, a specialist studies the clay through magnification. She follows the direction of each wedge, distinguishing writing from scratches left by roots, tools, or mineral deposits. The angle of a sign may identify a word. The spacing between lines may show where a passage begins or ends. Even the curve of the tablet can suggest its original size. She does not search for magic, she searches for consistency. Yet consistency produces something quietly unsettling. Repeated versions preserve the same essential arrangement. There is a world beneath the human world. It is entered through a controlled threshold. A keeper stands there on permission matters. The traveller cannot simply wander downward like an adventurous tourist who has ignored every warning sign. The entrance belongs to an ordered realm. This detail separates the tablet from vague ghost stories told beside evening fires. The passage below is administered. It has boundaries, officials, procedures, and consequences. The dead do not drift into an empty darkness. They enter a domain that already possesses authority. As though the unseen world developed its bureaucracy long before human kingdoms mastered theirs. You might find that comforting, you might also find it worse. Ancient Mesopotamians lived among gates. City walls controlled movement between cultivated safety and exposed countryside. Temple doors separated public courtyards from restricted sacred rooms. Palace entrances displayed royal power, while household thresholds guarded family space. A gate was never merely an opening. It announced that one kind of order ended and another began. The tablet carries that familiar experience downward. Somewhere beneath fields, canals, houses, and temples, the ultimate boundary waits. Its material may be mythical, but its logic would have felt immediate. You approach, you are noticed. Someone decides whether the door will move. The museum becomes quieter as evening settles outside. Reflections darken across the glass, and the tablet appears suspended within shadow. It has crossed nearly 4,000 years without offering a complete explanation. Fire may have hardened some tablets accidentally when ancient buildings burned, preserving the words through the destruction that buried them. Ruin became protection, disaster became an archive. The irony feels almost too elegant. You stand before clay that survived because human plans failed. Cities vanished, languages fell silent, and temples returned slowly to dust. The guarded passage remained, not intact, but persistent. Its signs waited beneath collapsed rooms until excavators lifted them into sunlight. Now the fragments speak again. They do not yet reveal everything beyond the entrance. They only establish that the Sumerian imagination placed a deliberate threshold beneath the earth. It was watched, regulated, and feared. Those who approached it could not rely upon rank, wealth, or ordinary strength. The first hidden truth is therefore simple. The tablet is not a solitary forbidden object. It is something stranger, a shared story copied carefully enough to outlive the civilization that understood it. And somewhere within its broken lines, the keeper is still waiting. Your mind drifts towards southern Mesopotamia, where broad rivers divide the land into shining channels beneath a white sky. Heat presses against the mud brick walls, and reeds tremble along the marshes with every passing current. The air carries wet earth, fish, smoke, and the sharp scent of sun-baked clay. Far across the plain, a stepped temple rises above low houses, visible from fields where farmers guide water through narrow ditches. This is a landscape made by movement. The rivers shift their courses, leaving old channels behind and opening new ones through the silt. Villages depend upon embankments, gates, baskets, canals, and constant human attention. Water brings grain, dates, reeds to birds, transport, and life. It can also break a bank at night and carry away months of careful labour. Nothing here feels permanently settled. The people who build the earliest Sumerian cities understand that survival depends upon controlling boundaries. A canal must remain within its banks, a field must hold its measured shape, a city wall must separate protected streets from open country, a temple doorway must mark where ordinary space gives way to sacred authority. The land teaches this lesson daily. You walk along a raised path between fields of barley. Mud grips the edges of your sandals, while insects hum above warm pools left by irrigation. In the distance, workers lift water with simple devices and pour it into smaller channels. Their movements repeat with patient rhythm, shaped by seasons older than any king. Records from early Mesopotamian cities confirm that irrigation demanded collective labour and careful organisation. Canals had to be cleared, levees repaired, and water distributed among competing households. Temple institutions and palace officials later supervised much of this work. Authority became visible through the power to direct water. That fact changes how you see the hidden world beneath the soil. To a farmer, the earth is not empty. It receives seed, holds moisture, hides roots, and returns grain. It also swallows tools, walls, bones, and entire settlements every season. Life rises from darkness. Every burial returns a body to the same ground. The underworld is therefore not imagined as a distant cloud or shining star. It belongs below the feet, beneath homes, roads, fields, and foundations. It is close enough to feel through the souls, yet unreachable through ordinary digging. The thought is strangely intimate. You continue toward the marshes where river water spreads into a maze of reeds. Birds burst suddenly from the shallows. Small boats glide through narrow passages, their hulls dark against reflected sunlight. Families cut reeds for roofs, mats, baskets, and fences. Fishermen pull nets from water that conceals more than it reveals. The marsh seems endless from within. Channels divide and rejoin without warning. A familiar route can disappear when reeds grow thick or water levels fall. Mist gathers during cooler hours, softening the horizon until land and water become difficult to distinguish. In such places, the living world already contains hidden entrances. A dark opening between reeds may lead to open water, a secluded village, or a dead end filled with mud. A deep pool may conceal fish, roots, broken pottery, or nothing at all. The surface keeps its secrets well. One unusual tradition claimed that certain marsh pools breathe during the night. People reportedly described bubbles, sounds, and sudden movements as signs of spirits beneath the water. Natural gases and shifting mud offer sensible explanations, but such explanations do not erase the experience. In darkness, a bubbling pool can sound remarkably like something exhaling below. The marsh does not need imagination, it already behaves like a dream. Your path turns toward the city, where walls rise from the flat plain in long, sunlit lines. A gatehouse controls entry. Guards observe merchants, labourers, herders, and travellers as they pass beneath heavy beams. Carts creak over packed earth. Donkeys complain with impressive commitment. Dust settles on wool. Baskets, bread, and polished wood. Inside Wamlir, streets twist between high walls. Workshops release smells of copper, leather, beer, oil, and baked bread. Children carry clay tablets to scribal schools. Priests move through courtyards where offerings are prepared. Storehouses receive grain from fields watered by the canals. The city appears secure, but its security depends upon doors. Every household has a threshold. Every storehouse has a seal. Every shrine restricts access. The temple at the city centre contains rooms entered only by chosen officials. Sacred images remain hidden from most eyes, approached through repeated stages of permission. A gate means order. Sure. This pattern helps explain why Sumerian accounts imagine the underworld as a place reached through controlled passage. The unseen realm reflects familiar structures, not because it copies them poorly, but because gates express the deeper social truth of the city. Whoever controls entry controls belonging. Scholars continue to debate how literally ancient audiences pictured the geography beneath the earth. Some historians emphasize poetic symbolism, while others argue that the descriptions reflect a widely shared cosmological model. A third view suggests that ritual practice and political authority and imagined geography cannot be separated cleanly. The uncertainty remains useful. You stand near the temple platform as evening approaches. Shadows lengthen across the courtyards. The mud bricks release the heat they gathered all day. Incense curls from a doorway, mixing with the smell of river damp and cooking fires. Above you, the temple seems to join earth and sky. Its raised terraces lift sacred space above ordinary streets. Yet the same structure reaches downward through massive foundations buried beneath the visible walls. The city rises because the earth supports it. People understand that every height has a depth. The Sumerian world is often pictured as layered. Heaven belongs above. The human world rests between. Fresh water exists beneath the ground, associated with deep hidden sources. The realm of the dead lies farther below, separated from daily life but still connected through burial, ritual or dream, and divine descent. These layers are not drawn like a modern scientific diagram. They emerge through stories, hymns, temple practices, and repeated images. Different texts do not always agree in detail. Ancient tradition rarely behaves like a tidy instruction manual. It prefers overlapping truths. You hear a distant bell from the temple precinct. The sound crosses roofs, courtyards, and canal banks before fading into the open plain. For a moment, it feels as though the earth itself has listened. The city prepares for night. Doors close, lamps are lit, families gather around bowls of food, boats settle against the riverbank. Outside the walls, darkness spreads quickly across fields and marshes, erasing familiar landmarks. Beneath everything lies silence. The people sleeping above it know that the ground holds ancestors. Forgotten foundations, buried offerings, and waters moving beyond sight. They know that the soil can nourish or conceal. They know that gates protect them from what belongs elsewhere. The hidden entrance beneath the earth grows from this landscape of shifting rivers and guarded thresholds. It is not placed randomly in darkness. It belongs to a civilization that measures life through channels, walls, doors, and controlled passage. A person entering a city must pass a gatekeeper. A person entering a temple must have permission. A person entering the realm below must expect the same. The rivers continue moving through the night. Water presses softly against reeds, carrying silt toward the distant fields. Moonlight settles upon the canals, while the city rests behind its walls. Far beneath those walls, another boundary waits. For a moment, it feels as though the night sky is lowered until the stars rest just above the temple roofs. You stand on a high terrace where the city spreads beneath you in dim rectangles of clay and shadow. Lamps flicker beside doorways. Canals catch narrow ribbons of moonlight. Beyond the walls, the plain disappears into darkness. The world seems flat from here. Yet Sumerian thought rarely leaves the world as a single surface. Their stories suggest layers, boundaries, and regions arranged around human life. Heaven arches above the cities. The inhabited earth lies beneath it. Deep waters remain hidden below the ground. Farther down waits the place from which the dead do not ordinarily return. No surviving tablet offers one complete map. Instead, the arrangement appears through scattered hymns, myths, royal compositions, ritual text, and school exercises. A line in one poem names the heavens. Another speaks of the great earth. Elsewhere, a deity travels through the deep waters or crosses toward the land of the dead. The picture must be assembled slowly from fragments that were never intended as a modern atlas. Scholars at Oxford, Yale, and the University of Pennsylvania have spent generations comparing these texts. Their work confirms that the Sumerians imagined a structured cosmos rather than an empty universe. The details shift between compositions, but the basic pattern remains clear. Human beings occupy only one region within a much larger order. That realization changes the night. You are no longer standing beneath a limitless sky. You are standing between domains. Above you lies the celestial realm associated with the great gods, stars, storms, and divine decisions. Below your feet lies a concealed depth connected with water, foundations, ancient powers, and death. The human city exists between them, exposed to influences descending from above and rising from below. It is an uncomfortable position. The sky offers signs through eclipses, planets, lightning, and unusual weather. The earth offers signs through floods, tremors, failing crops, strange births, and disturbed graves. Priests and scholars watch both directions. They observe the heavens, but they also listen to dreams and inspect what emerges from hidden places. The cosmos speaks indirectly. Sumerian language itself preserves traces of this layered vision. Words for heaven and earth often appear together as a complete pair, suggesting the ordered totality of existence. Temples connect these regions symbolically, lifting sacred structures upward while anchoring them deeply into the soil. Their names sometimes describe bonds between heaven and earth, as though architecture could hold the universe together. You place your hand against a cool parapet. The rough plaster scrapes your palm. Somewhere below, a door closes with a dull wooden sound. The city seems ordinary again, though only briefly. Ancient people did not separate religion, geography, and political order as neatly as modern categories suggest. A temple was a house, an institution, a treasury, a workplace, and a sacred centre. A king governed through military force, ritual duty, legal judgment, and divine approval. A river was water, transport, fertility, danger, and a boundary between worlds. Their map could never be morally physical. One of the deepest regions was associated with fresh subterranean water. Wells and springs made this idea plausible. Water appeared from below without falling from the sky. It gathered beneath fields and emerged through channels dug into the ground. To anyone living in a dry land, this hidden reservoir must have seemed immense. Later Mesopotamian tradition describes a primeval freshwater deep governed by divine power. Sumerian texts connect this hidden abundance with wisdom and creation and the mysterious foundations beneath the visible land. The water below is not yet the underworld, but it forms part of the concealed structure surrounding it. Depth contains more than death. A quirky belief recorded in later traditions imagined that certain sacred fish carried messages from the watery deep. Priests observed unusual creatures, movements, and appearances near temples associated with subterranean water. Most such signs were interpreted within systems of divination rather than treated as ordinary accidents. A strangely marked fish could become a sentence written by the unseen world. Modern science provides simpler explanations for unusual colour, shape, or behaviour. Ancient observers were not attempting modern biology. They were reading a cosmos in which every layer communicated through signs. The difference matters. You descend from the terrace into a courtyard where moonlight reaches only the centre. The surrounding walls rise like dark cliffs. A small basin reflects one star. The air smells of extinguished incense, damp clay, and oil from a nearby lamp. The architecture creates its own universe. Open sky remains visible above. Human activity fills the courtyard. Storage rooms and foundations vanish into darkness below. A temple complex turns cosmic structure into something you can walk through. Each doorway leads inward. Each restricted chamber brings you closer to a presence most citizens never see. Some historians argue that descriptions of cosmic layers grew partly from such architectural experience. Others believe temple design followed older cosmological ideas. The direction of influence remains debated, since sacred buildings and sacred stories developed together across many centuries. Neither explanation removes the mystery. The Sumerians also imagined distant mountains at the edges of the known world. Southern Mesopotamia itself is famously flat, making mountains appear especially dramatic. Travellers returning from the east or north spoke of high lands where stone, metal, timber, and unfamiliar peoples could be found. Mountains mark distance and difference. In some compositions, journeys toward the underworld involve roads, gates, deserts, or regions lying beyond normal travel. The realm below can appear vertically beneath the earth, yet it also possesses the qualities of a remote country. Ancient geography allows such overlapping directions without embarrassment. The dead travel downward and away. This is not a contradiction within poetic thought. A place may be beneath the ground, beyond the horizon, and outside human order at the same time. Dreams work in similar ways. You may descend a staircase and somehow arrive in a distant land. The path feels impossible only after waking. The Sumerian underworld behaves like dream geography with administrative rules. Its darkness is not formless. It contains roads, buildings, gates, a throne, officials, and inhabitants. The dead have destinations and conditions. Divine visitors follow procedures. Messengers carry instructions. The realm forms part of the cosmic system rather than existing as pure chaos. That may be the most unsettling feature. Chaos can be dismissed as emptiness. A structured world cannot. If the underworld has laws, then death is not an escape from order. It is entry into another order whose rules were established without human consent. You move through a narrow passage toward an outer court. Cold air touches your face. The stars appear again, scattered across the black sky with impossible clarity. Ancient astronomers tracked such lights over generations, recording patterns that would later support highly developed systems of observation. Yet the same careful minds preserved stories about hidden regions beneath the earth. This combination should not surprise you. Human beings often measure what they can see while imagining what remains concealed. Precision does not eliminate wonder, it gives wonder sharper edges. The layered cosmos offered an explanation for existence without making humanity its centre. People cultivated fields, built walls, raised children, and praised kings within a middle zone. Above them, divine powers governed larger patterns. Beneath them, older depths held water, memory, and the dead. The human world was important, but not supreme. A scholarly debate continues over whether ordinary citizens shared the same detailed cosmology found in learned texts. Temple scribes may have preserved ideas unfamiliar to farmers and labourers, yet burial customs, offerings, prayers, and household rituals suggest that awareness of the world below reached far beyond elite schools. People behaved as though the dead remained somewhere. They poured water into graves, they supplied food, they spoke names, they feared neglected spirits. Such actions reveal a map carried through practice, even when no one drew it upon clay. You look across the sleeping city once more. Roofs cover families wrapped in wool. Beneath those roofs lie floors. Beneath the floors lie foundations, older walls, forgotten burials, damp soil, and hidden water. The visible city occupies only the thinnest layers. Everything above seems open and luminous. Everything below seems compressed, guarded, and silent. Between them, human life continues with remarkable confidence, as though the ground were merely ground. But the ancient map suggests otherwise. In your ears, the river wind fades into the groan of a heavy door moving somewhere beneath the earth. You cannot see the hands pushing it. You only hear timber dragging across stone, followed by the slow settling of a bolt into place. The sound carries through darkness. Sumerian texts preserve a name for the threshold leading into the realm of the dead. That name is Ganza. It appears not as an ordinary city gate, nor as a doorway belonging to any mortal house, but as an entrance associated with the great land below. The word itself remains difficult. Ancient signs can hold several shades of meaning, especially when copied across centuries by different scribes. Ganza may refer to the gate of the underworld precinct, or the place where descent becomes irreversible. Translators choose their wording carefully because the surviving lines do not provide a neat architectural description. Still, the function is unmistakable. Ganza marks the boundary where the laws of living society no longer offer protection. Beyond it, the traveller enters a domain ruled by powers who do not answer to earthly kings. Titles, family connections, wealth, and reputation lose their ordinary force at this threshold. You approach through a passage of packed clay and cold stone. The air changes against your skin. Warm scents from bread ovens and garden herbs have vanished. In their place comes the mineral smell of enclosed ground, mixed with dust that has not moved for years. The gate stands ahead. No surviving Sumerian tablet tells you its exact height, colour, or a material. The absence invites later imagination, but the ancient text is more restrained. It emphasises procedure rather than decoration. The entrance matters because it is controlled, not because it is beautiful. This restraint makes it more convincing. Real authority rarely needs ornament in darkness. A closed door is sufficient. Records from Mesopotamian cities confirm that monumental gateways served legal, military, and ceremonial purposes. Judges could sit near city entrances. Merchants passed through controlled points. Guards inspected movement. Royal processions used gates to display power, while enemies understood that taking a gate meant breaking the city's protection. Ganza carries these familiar meanings into the unseen world. To pass through a gate is to enter another jurisdiction. The laws inside may differ from those outside. The person who approaches must accept that difference or remain excluded. Ancient listeners would have understood this instinctively, because every walled city taught the same lesson. The gate divides more than space. It divides status. A living visitor stands on one side with the breath, warmth, memory, and movement. The dead remain on the other side, bound to conditions that no human decree can reverse. Ganza, therefore, becomes the point where identity begins to change. The threshold is narrow in meaning, even if its physical shape remains uncertain. One step preserves the traveller as someone arriving. Another step makes that traveller subject to the realm below. Nothing dramatic needs to happen. The law has already changed. A curious later belief claimed that certain cracks in ruined temple floors marked forgotten entrances to Ganza. People sometimes treated deep fissures, abandoned wells, and collapsed chambers with ritual caution. Archaeologists explain such features through erosion, rebuilding, and unstable foundations. Yet a black opening in an ancient floor can awaken older instincts very quickly. You might laugh in daylight. You might not laugh alone. The name Ganza also reveals something about Sumerian imagination. The underworld is not reached through endless wandering without direction. It possesses a designated point of access. A defined entrance implies a defined inside, and a defined inside implies ownership. Someone rules there. Someone decides. This creates an unsettling order beneath ordinary existence. The dead are not merely lost. They are received into a system. The entrance serves that system by separating those who belong from those who do not. Scholars still debate whether Ganza should be understood primarily as a mythical location, a ritual concept, or a poetic image shaped by actual gates and burial practices. Some interpret it as part of a coherent underworld geography. Others caution that ancient texts often use place names symbolically, allowing one term to carry several meanings at once. The debate remains open because the tablets speak through context, not explanation. Scribes did not pause to define Ganza for distant readers. They wrote for people who already knew the stories, ceremonies, and associations surrounding the name. Modern understanding begins with only fragments of that shared knowledge. You stand where their certainty once existed. The passage widens slightly. Your hand touches a wall marked by shallow lines. Some are tool marks. Others resemble scratches made by repeated contact. Perhaps travellers once imagined placing a palm there before entering, though no evidence confirms such a custom. The thought remains strangely natural. Humans touch thresholds. They touch door frames when leaving home, temple walls when praying, gravestones when speaking to the dead, and familiar gates when returning after long absence. The hand reaches for solid material when the mind faces uncertainty. Ganza offers no comfort in return. The gate does not promise punishment, reward, or expulsion. It only enforces separation. This is important, because early Mesopotamian underworld traditions do not present death as a simple moral sorting of good and evil. The realm below receives kings, labourers, priests, children, warriors, and servants alike. Status may shape conditions, burial, or remembrance, but death itself remains universal. The gate is therefore impartial. A ruler approaching Ganza does not arrive with an army. A wealthy merchant cannot negotiate with silver. A famous name may still matter among descendants, yet the threshold does not open because of applause from the living. Its authority lies in indifference. You can imagine the gatekeeper listening from the other side. No face appears through the darkness, no torchlight moves. The silence itself becomes a form of examination. Who approaches? Why have you come? Who sent you? These questions belong to every guarded entrance, but beneath the earth they acquire terrible weight. An incorrect answer may mean exclusion. A truthful answer may mean admission. Neither outcome feels safe. Sumerian narratives often present divine travel through formal speech. Messengers carry exact words. Visitors state names and purposes. Commands must be repeated correctly. Language becomes part of the machinery of order. At Ganza, speech may function like a key. This does not mean the gate opens through a magical phrase in the modern sense. It means identity must be declared and recognized. The traveller cannot remain anonymous while crossing into a realm governed by rank, obligation, and divine authority. To be named is to be placed. To be placed is to be controlled. Outside the gate, the living world still contains uncertainty. A farmer may change fields, a merchant may travel, a family may move houses, a king may lose a throne. Human life permits some alteration, even when circumstances are harsh. Ganza reduces possibility. The farther one passes into the land below, the harder return becomes. The gate is not simply an entrance, but a mechanism of containment. It protects the living from the dead and the underworld from intrusion. Perhaps it also protects the order of the cosmos. If the dead moved freely among cities, households could never settle into ordinary life. If divine beings crossed without rules, boundaries would collapse. If the living entered and returned whenever curiosity demanded, death would lose its final authority. Ganza keeps each condition in its place. The idea may seem severe, yet ancient societies depended upon separation. Clean water had to remain apart from waste. Sacred rooms remained apart from common courtyards. The dead were buried beyond or beneath living spaces according to local custom. Boundaries preserved order. The underworld gate becomes the greatest boundary of all. A faint vibration passes through the floor. Dust falls from somewhere above, catching briefly in unseen air. The gate does not move, but its presence fills the passage. You begin to understand why the text gives the threshold a name. Unnamed darkness can be dismissed. A named gate cannot. Naming creates location, and location creates the possibility that someone once believed the entrance belonged to a real structure within the cosmos. Ganza waits without haste. It has no need to summon anyone. Every mortal journey eventually approaches its jurisdiction. The gate does not chase the living, threaten them, or announce itself through thunder. It simply remains closed until required. The bolt rests in darkness. The keeper listens. Beyond the door lies a country governed by different rules. And at this narrow boundary the human world ends. The passage narrows until your shoulder nearly brushes the wall. Cold settles into the stone, and the air carries a dry scent of dust, old reeds, and extinguished oil. Somewhere ahead, a figure waits where the darkness thickens around the gate. He does not call out. He does not need to. The Sumerian underworld possesses a gatekeeper whose task is both simple and absolute. His name is Nixi, and he stands between the traveller and the domain of Ereshkigal. In the Surviving Descent tradition, he is not presented as a monster. He is an official, and that is somehow more unsettling. A monster might act from hunger, rage, or instinct. An official acts because the rules require it. Neti does not improvise. He listens, reports, receives instructions, and carries them out. His power comes from obedience to a system older than the visitor standing before him. You imagine his face only vaguely. The tablets do not linger over his appearance. There is no careful description of eyes, clothing, age, or weapon. The text gives greater attention to his function, because function matters more than personality at this boundary. He is the one who notices arrival. That fact alone changes the atmosphere. The gate is not abandoned. The underworld is not a forgotten ruin where anyone may wander. Someone is always present to register movement, question purpose, and preserve the authority of the queen below. Ancient Mesopotamian administration depended upon watchers, messengers, scribes, and doorkeepers. Temple complexes employed personnel who controlled access to storerooms, courtyards, archives, and sacred chambers, palace households required similar layers of supervision. Records confirm that doors, seals, and authorized entry formed essential parts of institutional life. Nettie belongs to that familiar world of controlled space. Though his post stands beyond ordinary society, he resembles the doorkeeper of a temple. Yet the chamber behind him contains the dead. He resembles a palace servant, yet the ruler he serves governs a kingdom no human army can approach. Your footsteps stop several paces from him. Silence gathers between you, not empty silence, but the pause before a question. It feels as though the darkness itself is waiting for your name. Who are you? The question seems simple until the gate stands before you. A name in the living world carries family, rank, work, reputation, and memory. It tells others where you belong. At the threshold below, the same name becomes evidence that must be tested. The gatekeeper does not merely ask who approaches, he must determine whether the declared identity matches the traveller before him. A false name might conceal intention, an incomplete name might hide status, a visitor without recognition might remain outside forever. In Sumerian and later Mesopotamian thought, names hold serious power. To name a person, deity, city, or object is to place it within an ordered world. Names can preserve memory, establish authority, and connect the living with the dead. Destroying a name can resemble a second death. Nettie therefore guards more than a doorway. He guards classification. The traveller must become legible to the underworld. Identity must be stated clearly enough for the realm below to respond. The gatekeeper receives the name, carries the message inward, and waits for instruction from Ereshkigal. Nothing proceeds casually. This procedure resembles the formal language used in royal and temple settings. A messenger does not wander into a ruler's chamber and speak however he wishes. He repeats the words entrusted to him. He identifies the sender. He states the purpose. Exactness protects everyone involved. The underworld uses the same discipline. A curious fringe interpretation claims that Nettie's questioners once belonged to a secret initiation rite performed in underground chambers. Supporters point to the formal exchanges, repeated gate scenes, and staged removal of objects. No archaeological discovery proves such a ceremony existed in the form imagined. Still, the theory survives because the narrative reads with the rhythm of controlled ritual. The possibility remains tempting. You can picture a dark chamber beneath a temple, though no evidence allows certainty. A priest waits behind a door. An initiate speaks a prepared answer. One garment is removed, then another. Each threshold strips away an ordinary identity until only the ritual role remains. Perhaps the story shaped ceremony. Perhaps ceremony shaped the story. Scholars continue to debate whether the descent tradition reflects dramatic performance, funerary belief, political symbolism, or literary invention. The surviving tablets permit several readings without settling the matter. Nettie stands calmly inside that uncertainty. He is neither judge nor ruler. He does not create the law he enforces. His authority comes from proximity to the gate and loyalty to the queen. This distinction matters because underworld power is distributed through offices, not concentrated in a single dramatic figure. The realm operates through order. A traveller might appeal to a ruler, but a gatekeeper controls whether the appeal is ever heard. This small position becomes decisive. Nettie determines when a message enters the deeper chambers. He controls the pace of descent, and pace can become a form of power. You wait. The cold seems to increase while nothing happens. Perhaps Nettie has gone to report your arrival. Perhaps he remains nearby, observing whether fear changes your story. The silence stretches long enough for memory to begin speaking. You recall your house, your work, the faces of people who know your name above ground. Those connections confirm your identity. Here, they sound distant and fragile. The gatekeeper does not care how affectionately your name is spoken at home. He requires a kind of proof. Purpose matters as much as identity. A person might come through death, divine command, accident, ritual, or forbidden curiosity. Each reason carries different consequences. The gatekeeper must know why the traveller stands at the threshold, because the underworld does not welcome unnecessary visitors. In the descent narrative, even a goddess must declare herself. Divine rank does not cancel procedure. This is one of the clearest signs that the gate belongs to a system stronger than personal prestige. The visitor may be powerful, but the gate remains official. Neti's obedience also reveals the nature of Ereshkigal's rule. She does not need to appear at the entrance herself. Her authority extends outward through servants who do know their duties. The gatekeeper becomes the voice of a throne hidden far below. A council decree in the human world can travel through messengers, seals, and local officials. The ruler need not stand in every field or warehouse. Power survives through reliable repetition. The same principle governs the Dark Kingdom. You hear a movement near the door. It may be the shift of a foot, the scrape of a sandal, or the settling of ancient wood. Neti returns without ceremony. He has received instructions. He does not This absence of explanation creates a peculiar dread. Modern people often expect rules to be justified. Ancient authority did not always offer that courtesy. A command could be accepted because the proper ruler issued it, and the proper servant delivered it. Neti speaks with the calm of someone who has repeated the same instruction many times. His voice contains no cruelty. Cruelty would make the moment personal, and nothing here is personal. That may be the hardest truth. The gatekeeper does not hate the traveller. He does not enjoy fear. He performs a necessary task within a realm built upon separation. This makes resistance seem pointless, because there is no emotion to persuade. You might plead with anger, you might bargain with desire. Procedure remains untouched by both. The gate begins to open only when the underworld permits it. Neti controls the mechanism, but the command belongs elsewhere. The first opening reveals not freedom, but another controlled space. Beyond it waits a second demand. The traveller will not enter whole. Identity has been recognized, purpose has been stated, and permission has been granted, yet admission requires surrender, because the laws below do not allow a living visitor to carry every symbol of the upper world into Ereshkigal's domain. Neti steps aside. His work has only begun. The first doorway opens upon a second corridor, and the darkness seems to fold inward around you. A faint metallic smell hangs in the still air, mixed with cold dust and the sour trace of old oil. Ahead, another gate waits, then another beyond it, each one hidden until the traveller reaches the proper distance. The descent is arranged through 7 gates. Their number gives the journey a measured rhythm, as though the underworld receives each visitor through carefully separated stages. Nothing is taken all at once. Authority disappears piece by piece, allowing the traveller to feel every loss before the next demand arrives. 7 carries unusual weight across Mesopotamian tradition. Ancient texts speak of 7 sages, 7 judges, 7 storms, 7 demons, and groups of 7 divine powers. The number does not always mean a literal count in the modern sense. It often suggests completion, order, or a process carried through its full extent. The gates therefore form more than a staircase with repeated doors. They create a complete unmaking. Each threshold removes something that once announced rank, protection, beauty, or sacred office. By the final entrance, the traveller no longer appears as the figure who first approached the gatekeeper. You move toward the first barrier while the sound of the closing door fades behind you. The gatekeeper reaches for an ornament worn high upon the body. It may be a crown, a headdress, or another emblem associated with divine authority. The object is removed without violence, yet its absence changes the traveller immediately. A crown does not merely decorate the head, it tells everyone who must bow, who may command and who occupies the highest place within a visible hierarchy, once taken away, the head becomes simply a head again, vulnerable beneath the weight of darkness. The traveller asks why this must happen. The answer is restrained and final, such are the laws of the underworld. The phrase offers no explanation because explanation would invite discussion. The law is presented as older than the visitor, older than preference, and perhaps older than the gods who obey it. The second gate removes another object of power, jewelry, measuring tools, protective ornaments, and sacred garments appear in varying sequences across translations. Scholars continue to debate the precise identity of several items because ancient terminology can be obscure, yet their shared purpose remains clear. Each object carries meaning. A necklace can signal wealth, divine favour, family connection, or ritual status. A rod may suggest judgment or command, a ring can represent office, agreement, or controlled authority. Within can distinguish a goddess from a servant, a priest from a farmer, and a queen from everyone beneath her. The underworld takes these signs seriously enough to remove them. This is not robbery in the ordinary sense. The gatekeeper does not gather treasure for personal gain. The removal follows a pattern, and the objects are taken because they belong to the upper world. They carry claims that cannot remain fully active below. Records from Mesopotamian art confirm that clothing and ornaments communicated rank with extraordinary precision. Royal figures appear larger, more elaborately dressed, and surrounded by carefully chosen symbols. Priests, attendants, soldiers, and divine beings can often be identified through posture, costume, and objects held in their hands. An ancient viewer could read status from appearance. The 7 gates interrupt that reading. The traveller becomes harder to classify according to earthly and heavenly signs. Each surrender makes identity less visible, until only the person remains beneath the regalia. That process feels ceremonial, but it's also political. A ruler who loses the crown may still remember being a ruler. A priest without sacred clothing may still know the words of ritual. A warrior without weapons may still possess courage. Yet the surrounding world no longer recognizes those qualities through familiar signs. Power depends partly upon recognition. The underworld refuses to precede it. At the 3rd gate, another ornament leaves the body. Cold air touches skin that had been covered or protected. The sensation is small, but the meaning grows larger. The traveller is not simply losing possessions, she is losing distance from ordinary vulnerability. At the 4th gate, the process continues. The corridor feels narrower now, though perhaps the change belongs to the traveller rather than the walls. Without symbols of office, every shadow appears more equal. Stone does not honour rank, dust does not admire beauty. A fringe interpretation proposes that the 7 removals encode the movement of a bright celestial body through 7 visible stages of disappearance. Supporters connect the descent with cycles of the planet associated with the goddess. The theory creates an elegant astronomical pattern, though many historians caution that the literary and ritual meanings cannot be reduced to a single celestial event. The uncertainty gives the gates wider power. They may describe death, political defeat, ritual transformation, seasonal change, celestial motion, or several ideas at once. Ancient stories often survive because they carry more than one truth without choosing between them. You pass the 5th gate. The gatekeeper's hands remain steady. He neither rushes nor pauses for sympathy. His role is to ensure that nothing forbidden travels deeper than permitted. The traveller asks the same question again. The answer does not change in meaning, though the repeated words now feel heavier. The law of the underworld is not explained because repetition itself becomes instruction. Resistance changes nothing. At the 6th gate, the body bears fewer signs of its former place. The traveller may feel anger, humiliation, or fear. But the text does not need to describe every emotion. The sequence allows the listener to supply them naturally. You know what it feels like to surrender something that defines you. A uniform, wedding ring, official title, inherited object, or familiar garment can hold years of meaning. Remove enough such things, and the question becomes difficult. Who remains? The gates do not answer, they only continue. Scholars disagree about whether the removal represents symbolic death, ritual purification, enforced submission, or the stripping of dangerous divine power. One interpretation emphasizes vulnerability. Another sees the underworld protecting itself from a powerful intruder. A third suggests that entry requires the abandonment of every claim made in the world above. These readings need not cancel one another. A visitor carrying full divine power might threaten the balance of the realm. A ruler wearing every emblem might challenge the queen below. A living body retaining every protection might pass through death without truly entering its condition. The gates prevent such exceptions. By the seventh threshold, the corridor has become silent enough for breathing to sound intrusive. The final item is removed, leaving the traveller without the familiar layers that once announced identity. Nothing remains to impress the judges or intimidate the court. The number 7 reaches completion. You stand beside the traveller and feel the chill of the final chamber. The gatekeeper holds the surrendered objects somewhere behind you. Each one marks a previous self, preserved outside the deepest region. There is something almost merciful in the gradual pace. Sudden loss produces shock, while measured loss produces understanding. The traveller is given 7 opportunities to recognize what the underworld demands. It demands everything symbolic. The body still remains, but it no longer carries a public argument about importance. No crown rises above other heads. No jewellery catches the light. No garment creates sacred distance. The traveller becomes visible in a more dangerous way. Nothing stands between the person and judgment. Ancient listeners may have heard a warning about authority within the story. Kings built monuments, collected tribute, commanded armies, and filled tombs with valuable goods. Yet death reduced every display. Even the strongest ruler eventually entered a realm where another sovereign already sat upon the throne. The gates protect that throne through subtraction. They remove the visitor's ability to arrive as an equal. Every doorway lowers status until the queen beneath the earth faces someone stripped of competing claims. This may explain why the process feels both religious and administrative. The gates do not torture the traveller, they correct the balance of power. No one enters carrying a rival kingdom. The final door begins to move. Its hinges produce a long, low sound that seems to travel through the floor. Beyond it lies a chamber larger than the corridor, though darkness conceals its boundaries. The traveller steps forward without ornament, weapon, or public sign of divinity. 7 gates stand closed behind her, each holding one fragment of the identity she once displayed. The underworld has not yet judged her. It has only prepared her to be judged. A faint scent of cedar oil lingers in the darkness as Inanna approaches the road descending from her city. Above her, temple courtyards still hold the warmth of day, and musicians prepare hymns beneath painted walls. Below her feet, the land of Ereshkigal waits without sunlight, harvest, or applause. Inanna is no ordinary traveller. She is associated with love, fertility, political power, conflict, and the bright planet that appears near dawn or evening. Ancient hymns praise her as radiant, dangerous, generous, and impossible to contain within one simple role. She can inspire desire in one moment and overturn established authority in another. Her decision to descend therefore carries enormous risk. She does not wander into the underworld through confusion or accidental death. She prepares herself, announces her intention, and travels toward a kingdom ruled by her sister. The journey begins as an act of will. The surviving poem offers several possible reasons for her descent. Inanna speaks of attending funeral rites connected with the husband of Ereshkigal, though many scholars suspect that her purpose extends beyond ceremonial respect. Her clothing, divine powers, and commanding manner suggest that she approaches the realm below with ambition. Perhaps she intends to expand her influence. Perhaps she seeks knowledge unavailable in the upper world. Perhaps the funeral provides a lawful reason for entering territory she hopes to challenge. The text refuses to settle the question completely, allowing uncertainty to follow her like a second shadow. That uncertainty suits Inanna. She is not a calm symbol carved into one fixed meaning. She represents movement between extremes, including affection and violence, order and disruption, tenderness and royal command. A goddess of such contradictions would hardly descend for one uncomplicated purpose. You watch her enter a quiet chamber where sacred objects have been arranged. Lamp flames brighten polished metal and coloured stones. Attendants keep their voices low while she prepares each item with deliberate care. Nothing about the scene resembles panic. She places a crown upon her head. It signals divine rank and the right to command. She arranges beads around her neck and positions ornaments across her chest. She takes objects associated with judgment, authority, and protection, then covers herself in a royal garment. The complete appearance becomes a declaration. Inanna does not plan to enter as a grieving relative without status. She carries the visible language of sovereignty upon her body. Mesopotamian images confirm that divine and royal dress communicated identity through carefully repeated details. Horned crowns distinguished deities, while jewelry and layered garments marked elevated status. A figure's clothing could reveal power before any inscription supplied a name. Inanna turns herself into a message. Every object states that she belongs among the highest powers. Every ornament warns that she arrives with rights, relationships, and sacred abilities. She approaches the underworld carrying the full argument of who she believes herself to be. Yet preparation includes more than clothing. Inanna summons her faithful minister, Ninshubur, and gives precise instructions. If she does not return within a fixed period, Ninshubur must raise a public lament and seek help from powerful gods. The plan reveals that Inanna expects danger. She orders mourning to begin in assembly places and sacred houses. Her minister must approach divine authorities one by one, pleading that Inanna not be allowed to remain dead below. The instructions are detailed because the survival may depend upon exact obedience. This is not the behaviour of someone certain of victory. You hear the firmness in her voice, but beneath it lies awareness of the underworld's strength. Inanna knows that her rank may not protect her once she crosses into another jurisdiction. She therefore leaves a thread connecting her to the world of the living. Ninshubur becomes that thread. Ancient Mesopotamian literature often presents loyal attendants as more than servants. They carry messages, preserve plans, advise rulers, and act when their masters cannot. Ninshubur's role demonstrates that divine power can still depend upon trust. The goddess may wear a crown, but her safety rests partly with someone who remains behind. A quirky modern interpretation imagines Inanna's preparation as the earliest surviving emergency plan. The comparison is playful, yet surprisingly accurate. She identifies the danger, appoints a responsible person, establishes a deadline, and provides instructions for escalation. Even a goddess knows not to enter a forbidden realm without telling someone where she has gone. The humour fades as she steps outside. Dust rises lightly around her feet, and the evening air presses warm against the walls. The city continues its ordinary movements, unaware that one of its greatest divine powers is leaving the upper world. Merchants count grain, bakers remove bread from ovens, families gather near lamps. Somewhere, A singer begins a hymn praising the very goddess now walking away from her temple. Inanna's route is not described with the precision of a modern road map. The poem moves through sacred geography, where distance can be physical, ritual, and cosmic at once. She leaves the region of familiar light and approaches the place where Ereshkigal's authority begins. The sky gradually disappears. The road grows colder, and sound loses its softness. Her ornaments no longer glitter beneath sunlight. Though their weight remains against her body, each step carries the perfume of temple oils deeper into a region that knows little of growing things. Inanna does not turn back. Some historians interpret her descent as a myth explaining seasonal decline and renewal. Others connect it with royal power, ritual performance, or the changing visibility of the bright planet associated with her. Literary scholars emphasize the story's exploration of ambition, death, and transformation. No single interpretation has silenced the others. The poem may have endured precisely because it operates on several levels. A farmer can hear the disappearance of fertility, a priest can hear a ritual pattern, a ruler can hear a warning about crossing another sovereign, a grieving family can hear the terror of someone failing to return. You hear footsteps. They belong to a goddess who embodies life's most intense energies, moving steadily toward a place where those energies weaken. Her descent creates tension because she seems both powerful and dangerously unprepared for the kind of power awaiting her. Inanna commands desire, but the dead do not reproduce. She inspires conflict, but the underworld cannot be conquered like a city wall. She grants status, yet every title below depends upon Ereshkigal's. Her greatest strengths may have no proper use there. The relationship between the sisters deepens the unease. Ereshkigal is not merely a hostile stranger. She belongs to the same divine family, yet occupies a radically different domain. One sister receives praise beneath open skies, the other rules where no sunlight reaches. Their meeting carries the weight of unequal remembrance. Temples celebrate Inanna across many cities. Hymns describe her beauty and force, and kings seek her favour, and poets fill tablets with her names. Ereshkigal receives fewer public celebrations, but her kingdom remains unavoidable. One sister possesses brilliance, the other possesses permanence. Perhaps Inanna descends because brilliance eventually becomes curious about permanence. Perhaps the goddess praised by the living wishes to test whether any realm can resist her presence. It is possible that she believes sacred authority should travel wherever she chooses. The underworld is about to answer that belief. She reaches the outer entrance and strikes the gate with commanding force. Her voice carries through the enclosed passage as she demands admission. There is no humility in her request. She identifies herself and states her reason for coming. The gatekeeper hears a goddess at the door. Inside, Ereshkigal receives news that her sister stands outside wearing the full symbols of power. The queen below reacts with troubling intensity. She strikes her thigh and bites her lip. Gestures suggesting anger, distress, or the pain of threatened authority. The funeral explanation has not reassured her. Ereshkigal issues instructions that transform the visit into submission. The gates will open according to the laws of her realm. At each entrance, one item must be taken from Inanna's body. The command is calculated. Inanna arrived dressed as a ruler who expects recognition. Ereshkigal will allow her to enter only after removing every visible claim that might challenge the throne below. Hospitality becomes a controlled dismantling of success. The gatekeeper returns to the entrance. He speaks respectfully, inviting Inanna to proceed. His manner reveals nothing about the losses waiting inside him. She accepts. Perhaps confidence still guides her. Perhaps she believes every surrendered object will be restored. Perhaps divine pride prevents her from imagining herself powerless. The first gate opens, and cold air moves across her face. Behind her lies a city filled with music. incense, grain, lovers, arguments, births, and morning light. Ahead lies a kingdom where none of those things holds the same meaning. Inanna crosses the threshold by choice. That choice makes the journey more disturbing. She understands that danger exists, yet she continues because something below matters more than safety. Ambition, duty, curiosity, grief, and destiny may all travel beside her. The door closes softly. A goddess has entered the dark carrying every symbol of who she is. The realm beneath the earth has already decided that none of them will remain. The first ornament leaves Inanna's body with a soft metallic sound, and the chamber seems to notice. The crown no longer rests above her brow, so the space around her head feels suddenly exposed. No thunder follows, no divine voice protests, and no hidden force restores what has been taken. She asks why the law demands this surrender, but the answer remains calm and immovable. The customs of the lower realm cannot be questioned by those entering it. Inanna continues because retreat would mean admitting that another power has stopped her journey. At the second gate, beads are lifted from her neck. Their weight had been familiar enough to disappear from awareness, yet their absence becomes immediate. Cool air touches the skin where polished stones once rested, and the loss feels larger than the objects themselves. Jewelry in ancient Mesopotamia could express wealth, beauty, protection, and divine favour. Excavations from royal graves have revealed necklaces made from gold, shell, carnelian, and deep blue stone brought across remarkable distances. Such materials carried the memory of trade routes, skilled hands, and powerful households. Inanna's ornaments therefore speak before she does. They announce that distant resources, sacred workshops, and human devotion have gathered around her identity. When the gatekeeper removes them, he interrupts that language one piece at a time. The third gate claims the paired stones resting upon her chest. Their exact meaning remains uncertain, because ancient words can outlive the objects they once described. Some interpreters see protective ornaments, while others suspect symbols connected with fertility, allure, or ritual power. The ambiguity does not weaken the moment. It reveals how completely the original audience has vanished, leaving modern readers to examine shadows where familiar objects once stood. What mattered to ancient listeners was obvious enough to require no explanation. You feel the frustration of that silence. A single lost detail might have clarified whether Inanna enters as lover, warrior, priestess, and queen, or all of them together. Instead, the object disappears through the gate, carrying part of its meaning away with it. At the fourth threshold, a measuring rod and line are taken from her hands. These objects may represent the power to establish boundaries, judge proportions, or impose order upon land and building. In Mesopotamian royal imagery, measurement can symbolize the authority to create structure from confusions. Cities depend upon measurement. Fields require boundaries, canals require slopes, walls require alignment, and taxes require counted grain. A ruler who measures does more than calculate. A ruler defines what belongs where, and who owes what to whom. The underworld removes that capacity from Inanna. She can no longer carry her own standard into Ereshkigal's kingdom. She cannot redraw its limits, divide its territories, or measure its inhabitants according to laws from above. The realm below refuses to be surveyed by a visiting power. This may be one of the quietest humiliations in the descent. Weapons can be broken, crowns can be stolen, and armies can be defeated. A measuring line seems harmless, yet it represents the right to organize reality itself. Without it, Inanna must enter a world already ordered by someone else. The fifth gate takes the golden rings from her hands. Rings can suggest agreement, status, wealth, or sacred office. Depending upon the context, their circular shape has encouraged many later interpretations. though the ancient poem offers no convenient explanation. The removal still changes her gestures. Hands once framed by gold now appear bare against the darkness. Fingers that bestowed favour, accepted offerings, and signalled command possess no visible mark of privilege. A strange modern theory proposes that each removed object corresponds to a human energy centre, with the descent representing spiritual purification. The comparison belongs to traditions far removed from ancient Sumer, and historians find no evidence that the poem encodes such a system. Even so, theory persists because the stage losses resemble many later rituals of inner transformation. The resemblance may arise from a universal experience. Human beings often imagine change through removal. Hair is cut, clothing is exchanged, names are altered, possessions are surrendered, and old roles are abandoned. Transformation becomes visible when something familiar disappears. Inanna's transformation is not gentle. At the sixth gate, her breastplate is removed. The object carries an ominous name linked with command over men, suggesting a garment that combines protection with political dominance. Its loss exposes both body and authority. A breastplate guards the heart and chest, the vulnerable centre of breath and life. Removing it does not merely weaken defence, it allows the underworld to approach the traveller without a barrier between flesh and judgment. The air feels colder now. Inanna still possesses divine identity, but each gate has reduced her ability to display or defend it. Her power has not vanished in one dramatic act. It has been separated from her through lawful procedure, which makes resistance appear almost impossible. Scholars disagree about whether these removals should be understood as punishment for arrogance or as the unavoidable condition of descent. Some emphasize Inanna's ambition, arguing that the underworld strips her because she arrives as a potential conqueror. Others see the process as universal, suggesting that every being must surrender status before death. A third interpretation focuses on ritual exchange. Inanna may be passing through stages that imitate burial, where clothing, ornaments, and social identity become detached from the body. The poem can support each reading because the gates operate physically, politically, and symbolically at once. The seventh gate waits in complete stillness. Only the royal garment remains, covering Inanna with the final visible sign of her station. Fabric may seem less powerful than gold, but clothing shapes the body others are allowed to see. It creates dignity, privacy, rank, and distance. Ancient textiles required immense labour. Wool had to be gathered, cleaned, spun, dyed, woven, finished, and fitted. Temple households employed large groups of textile workers, many of them women, whose production supported trade, ritual, and institutional wealth. A royal garment therefore contains hidden labour. It carries the work of hands that may never appear in the poem, yet that skill surrounds the goddess. Whenever the cloth is taken, an entire social world disappears from her body. Inanna stands without the layers that connected her to templars, cities, artisans, rulers, and worshippers. She remains herself, but the visible network of power has been removed. The moment is not written for crude spectacle. Its force comes from vulnerability rather than exposure. The goddess who entered adorned like a sovereign now possesses no object that commands recognition. She is brought low. The phrase carries both physical and political meaning. To descend is to move downward, but it is also to lose standing. The underworld turns direction into status, making every step deeper a reduction of former claims. Inanna may still remember her hymns. She may still know the names by which kings praised her. She may still feel the fierce intelligence that guided her into dangerous territory. None of those qualities produces immediate protection. Memory cannot replace armour. The gates close behind her in sequence, sealing each surrendered object outside the deepest chamber. She cannot reach back for the crown or call the necklace into her hands. The structure itself prevents reversal. You hear the final bolt settle. The stripping of divine power reveals a harsh principle within the underworld tradition. Identity may be sacred, but it is also carried through relationships. Symbols, recognition, and place remove those supports, and even a goddess becomes vulnerable to another authority. This does not mean her nature is erased completely. Something essential remains, or there would be no traveller left to confront Ereshkigal. Yet the poem asks how much of a person survives when every public sign has been taken away. Perhaps power lives partly inside the self, perhaps it lives partly in the eyes of others, perhaps the gates expose the difference. Inanna enters the final chamber bent low, deprived of the objects that once held the upper world around her. The darkness does not celebrate. It simply receives her in the condition its laws require. Nothing now stands between the goddess and the throne beneath everything. The chamber opens wider than the corridor, though its walls remain hidden beyond the reach of any lamp. A low sound moves through the darkness, part breath, part distant wind, and part the soft shifting of countless bodies. At the centre of that unseen space sits Ereshkigal, queen of the great land below. She does not rise to greet Inanna. Her authority does not depend upon ceremony, beauty or movement. She remains seated while the visitor approaches stripped of every visible claim. The contrast is complete. One sister arrives emptied of rank, while the other occupies a throne that needs no ornament to prove its power. Ereshkigal rules a kingdom no living ruler can annex. Its borders cannot be crossed by armies. Its gates cannot be bribed open. And its population grows without conquest. Every city sends inhabitants there eventually, even when those cities never agreed upon anything else. That gives her a sovereignty unlike any other. Ancient Mesopotamian rulers describe themselves through victory, construction, divine favour, and control of fertile land. They boast of walls raised, enemies defeated, canals restored, and temples enriched. Ereshkigal requires none of these achievements because death supplies her realm continually. Her power is passive only in appearance. She does not need to campaign across the upper world. Time performs the work on her behalf. The surviving traditions portray her as fearsome, but not simple. She is not merely an enemy waiting beneath the soil. She is a ruler with duties, emotions, attendants, and a court. Her position may bring authority, yet it also isolates her from sunlight, fertility, and the public worship enjoyed by more celebrated deities. You sense that isolation in the chamber. No breeze carries garden fragrance through an open window. No musicians fill a courtyard with praise. The throne stands in a country where celebration arrives muted, if it arrives at all. Ereshkigal possesses everything below and almost nothing above. This tension makes her more than a symbol of death. She becomes the embodiment of power joined with confinement. She rules absolutely, yet she cannot simply abandon her realm without disturbing the order of existence. The throne is hers, but it may also be her prison. Some scholars interpret her anger toward Inanna as the reaction of a sovereign facing invasion. Others see grief, jealousy, or physical suffering within her gestures. The poem allows several emotions to overlap, creating a queen whose hostility may grow from both political threats and personal pain. Inanna enters surrounded by fame. Ereshkigal receives her from a place of obscurity. The sisters represent opposing conditions. Inanna belongs to desire, conflict, fertility, and public presence. Ereshkigal belongs to stillness, endings, enclosure, and hidden authority. Their meeting brings the brightest force of the upper world before the ruler of its deepest silence. Neither can fully exist within the other's domain. Records from Mesopotamian religion confirm that underworld deities formed a recognized part of a divine order. They were not treated as unreal because they were feared. nor were they placed outside religion as purely evil beings. Offerings, prayers, names, and rituals acknowledged their authority. This differs from later traditions that divide the universe into a good heaven and an evil place below. The Sumerian underworld is severe, but it is not simply a realm of moral wickedness. It serves a necessary function within the cosmos. Ereshkigal rules because someone must rule there. The chamber contains attendants and judges, though their forms remain difficult to distinguish. They do not rush toward Inanna. They wait as members of a court whose procedures have already begun through the gates. The throne becomes the fixed point around which every decision turns. Ereshkigal hears the report, sees the stripped visitor, and understands that the balance has shifted in her favour. Inanna can no longer arrive as an equal. A fringe belief claims that Ereshkigal preserves the memory of a forgotten historical queen who ruled a subterranean sanctuary or mining region. Supporters point to the political language surrounding her court and the practical organisation of the underworld. No evidence has established such a human origin, and the theory remains speculative. Still, the idea survives because her kingdom feels administrative rather than chaotic. It contains offices, commands, messengers, and legal restraint. The lower realm resembles a state shaped into myth. Perhaps people imagine death through the institutions they know best. Farmers picture fields, sailors picture crossings, and city dwellers picture gates, judges, and rulers. The underworld becomes understandable by borrowing the machinery of human order. Yet Ereshkigal exceeds that machinery. A human queen depends upon guards, food, alliances, heirs, and loyal cities. Ereshkigal's authority rests upon the condition of mortality itself. As long as living beings die, her realm remains populated. She cannot be overthrown without changing existence. The thought settles heavily in the chamber. Inanna may challenge a ruler, but she cannot easily challenge the principle that gives that ruler power. Her divine force belongs to growth, attraction, and human passion, while Ereshkigal governs the destination awaiting everybody when those forces end. The sisters are unequal here because place determines strength. A storm god rules beneath open skies. A river god rules where water moves. A sun deity sees through daylight. Ereshkigal rules where light, growth, and movement diminish. Each divine power belongs most fully within a particular realm. Inanna has entered the place where Ereshkigal is complete. The queen's appearance remains only partly described across surviving traditions. Later texts portray signs of distress, labour, anger, and bodily pain. These details complicate the image of a cold ruler. Ereshkigal suffers even while she commands. Pain does not reduce her authority. It may deepen it. She rules not from distance, but from intimate knowledge of the conditions surrounding her subjects. The dead inhabit a land of diminished sensation and broken connection, while their queen embodies grief intense enough to shake the chamber. You hear her voice at last. It is not loud, yet the court responds immediately. Power here travels through certainty rather than volume. Ereshkigal does not ask whether Inanna enjoyed the journey. She does not praise her courage or inquire about the cities above. Hospitality has no place within this confrontation because the visitor's arrival threatens the established order. The queen must decide what the underworld does with a divine intruder. Scholars continue debating whether Ereshkigal should be read as cruel, just jealous, or bound by law. The poem never reduces her to one motive. Her actions may defend her throne, enforce cosmic boundaries, and express personal anguish simultaneously. That complexity prevents an easy judgment. From Inanna's position, Ereshkigal appears merciless. From the perspective of the lower realm, she may be preserving stability. A goddess from above has entered wearing symbols of conquest and command. Allowing her to remain powerful might place every boundary at risk. The underworld therefore responds as any threatened kingdom might respond. It disarms, isolates, judges, and contains. The difference is that its containment is final. Ereshkigal looks upon her sister without the signs that once made Inanna radiant. No crown divides them by status. No gold reflects light between them. No royal garment shields vulnerability. The meeting becomes more intimate and more dangerous because nothing remains to distract from identity. One sister is known everywhere and controls nothing here. The other is rarely celebrated and controls everything within this chamber. The Hidden Queen possesses a form of authority that does not require love. Humans may praise Inanna willingly, but they reach Ereshkigal regardless of devotion. Her rule does not depend upon belief, affection, or gratitude. It depends upon arrival. You stand within that realization as the air thickens around the throne. Ereshkigal has waited through generations of human kings, temple festivals, harvests, wars, marriages, and births. All such events create stories above, yet every story eventually sends someone downward. Her patience is endless because time belongs to her. Inanna entered seeking something the poem refuses to explain completely. She may have desired greater power, knowledge, or authority over the final boundary. Now she stands before the one ruler who cannot surrender without dissolving the order of death. Ereshkigal raises her gaze. The judges prepare to speak. The chamber becomes still, and even the distant murmuring of the dead seems to recede. The queen beneath everything does not need to threaten her visitors. She only needs to let the laws of her kingdom proceed. A low murmur moves across the chamber as the judges take their places. They are not introduced with music, banners, or ceremony. Their presence becomes known through stillness, through the sudden discipline of every attendant, and through the silence that settles around Ereshkigal's throne. These figures are often called the Anunana, a divine assembly associated with judgment in the world below. Different Mesopotamian texts describe such groups in varying ways, and their exact number does not remain consistent across every tradition. Their function, however, is clear enough. They witness, decide, and confirm the fate imposed upon the one standing before them. They do not resemble a modern court. No advocate steps forward to defend Inanna. No witness is questioned under oath. No written argument is read aloud. The judges do not examine evidence, because the central fact is already visible. A divine visitor has entered a forbidden jurisdiction carrying claims of authority, and the underworld has stripped those claims away. The judgment begins from presence. You feel the pressure of their attention without seeing every face. They may sit in a half circle, or perhaps stand beside the throne in rigid silence. The tablets offer no complete arrangement, leaving the chamber open to imagination. What matters is not their posture, but the force of their collective gaze. In ancient Mesopotamia, assemblies could hold serious political and legal importance. Elders, officials, temple authorities, and royal representatives took part in decisions concerning property, debt, inheritance, marriage, and crime. Surviving legal documents reveal a society deeply concerned with testimony, agreements, seals, and recognized procedure. The judges below reflect that concern in darker form. Human courts attempt to settle disputes among people who still possess choices. The underworld court settles the position of someone whose choices have narrowed almost completely. There is no appeal to another city, no payment to satisfy a creditor, and no oath capable of restoring former status. The judges speak a verdict through what the poem describes as the eye of death. The phrase remains haunting because it suggests that judgment occurs through sight itself. They do not merely look at Inanna, their gaze transforms her condition. Seeing becomes an action. Modern listeners may imagine rays, curses, or supernatural force, but the ancient wording is more restrained. The judges direct the look of death toward her, pronounce a word of anger and utter a cry of guilt. Each act moves her farther from divine visitor toward lifeless captive. The sequence feels ritualized. A gaze identifies Ryuans, a word condemns, a cry completes the sentence. Inanna does not fall because of combat, poison, or physical injury. She is overcome through the lawful language of the underworld. This gives speech immense power. Sumerian literature often treats properly spoken words as forces that shape reality. A divine decree can establish destiny. A royal command can organize labor. A curse can remove protection, while a blessing can secure prosperity. Language belongs not only to communication, but to authority. The judges possess authority concentrated into sound. Their verdict does not persuade reality, it orders reality. Inanna stands puzzled beneath their attention. The ornaments that once expressed her power are gone, leaving no visible barrier between her body and their decision. She cannot answer with a stronger crown, simautas, or a brighter garment, or a rival assembly of supporters. The court has isolated her completely. A strange fringe theory claims that the judges represent 7 stars once used to mark a seasonal period of disappearance in the night sky. The idea draws upon Mesopotamian interest in celestial observation and the divine associations of certain constellations. Most scholars consider the proposed identification too uncertain, since the literary judges perform legal and cosmic roles that exceed a simple star pattern. Still, the theory captures one useful feeling. The judges seem distant, fixed, and impossible to influence. Much like stars observed from a dark field, their decision appears to come from an order beyond personal emotion. The poem gives them no individual speeches. This absence distinguishes them from human judges who might disagree, question, or negotiate. The underworld assembly acts as a single force. Whatever private thoughts its members possess remain hidden behind the verdict. You hear no debate among them. Perhaps that is because the law has already decided the case. The judges do not invent Inanna's fate. They confirm the consequence attached to her presence. Their role resembles sealing a tablet after the terms have been established. Ancient contracts required witnesses and seals because memory alone could be challenged. A mark pressed into the clay preserved agreement beyond the moment of speech. The underworld judges function like living seals, fixing a decision within cosmic order. Once confirmed, the verdict becomes difficult to alter. Scholars continue to debate whether Inanna is condemned for violating underworld law, threatening Ereshkigal's authority, or simply entering a realm where death applies to everyone. Some readings emphasize guilt, while others emphasize inevitability. The distinction matters because punishment and condition are not identical. If Inanna is punished, then her ambition causes the result. If death is the condition of entry, then even innocent intention would not protect her. The poem permits both possibilities to remain close together. That ambiguity deepens the fear. Human beings often prefer to believe disaster follows wrongdoing because wrongdoing can be avoided. A realm where death applies regardless of moral innocence offers far less comfort. It suggests that proper behaviour cannot cancel mortality. The judges do not ask whether Inanna deserves death in a moral sense. They enforce the reality governing the place she enters. Their calmness becomes more frightening than anger. A furious judge might be appeased once emotion fades. A corrupt judge might accept a gift. A mistaken judge might reconsider. The Inanna display no such weakness. They seem less like personalities than functions within a permanent system. Inanna faces decision without loopholes. The court also reveals how the underworld understands equality. Above ground, gods possess different ranks, cities honour different patrons, and rulers command unequal wealth. Below ground, distinctions may survive in memory and treatment, but every entrant must confront the same fundamental limit. No being carries unrestricted power through death. This does not make the underworld gentle or fair. Equality under an unchangeable law can still feel merciless. The judges reduce difference by reducing possibility. You listen as the verdict settles across the chamber. It does not echo loudly. Instead, it seems absorbed by the walls, as though the place has heard the same decision countless times. The dead nearby do not react. Perhaps they remember their own arrival. Perhaps memory has become too dim for surprise. Perhaps the court's procedures are simply part of the atmosphere now, as ordinary as wind among reeds once seemed above. Inanna's body weakens beneath the judgment. Breath loses rhythm. Warmth withdraws from her skin. The force associated with love, fertility, conflict, and royal command becomes motionless under the gaze of the underworld. Nothing rushes. The judges do not celebrate. Ereshkigal does not descend from her throne to claim victory. The verdict carries itself through the goddess until resistance ends. This restraint preserves the dignity of the scene. The horror lies not in spectacle, but in certainty. A powerful being becomes still because the system beneath the earth has recognized her as subject to its law. The court's purpose extends beyond one visitor. It guards the border between mortality and disorder. Without judgment, the dead might wander without assigned place. Intruding powers might challenge the queen. Divine travelers might carry conflicting laws into the lower realm. The judges prevent confusion through final decisions. Their authority is therefore administrative, religious, and cosmic at once. They classify what arrives, confirm its condition, and protect the structure of the hidden kingdom. Human courts preserve cities for a generation. This court preserves the separation between life and death. The difference is immense. You sense the chamber relaxing once the sentence takes effect. Attendants resume their positions. The judges withdraw into stillness. Their work requires no further explanation because the result stands before them. Inanna no longer appears as an active claimant before the throne. She has become an object within the underworld's control, stripped not only of regalia, but of movement and voice. The judges have finished. Their verdict passes into the silence surrounding the dead, where no public record needs to be displayed. The underworld remembers through custody rather than inscription. Above ground, kings carve decisions into stone so future generations will know their authority. Below ground, the decision is written directly upon the body. A dry wind moves through the great dwelling, though no open sky exists above it. Dust gathers along the floor, settles into folds of clothing, and softens every footprint until the ground seems untouched. The dead remain within this house, not as guests awaiting departure, but as inhabitants of a country built around absence. Mesopotamian texts describe the underworld as the house from which no traveller returns by ordinary means. Its road leads in one direction, and its doors protect that sauvie. The phrase does not suggest a small building. It names an entire condition, a vast residence where the dead continue without the freedoms that once defined life. You pass through dim chambers where countless figures sit in silence. Some retain the outlines of former age and occupation, while others have faded into shapes difficult to distinguish. A king and a labourer may occupy different places, but darkness covers both with the same patient dust. The air contains no fragrance of rain, roasted grain, or river reeds. Nothing ripens here. Mashni, nothing freshens with morning. The smells belong to clay, old cloth, dry earth, and rooms closed too long. Descriptions of the dead eating dust and clay appear repeatedly in Mesopotamian underworld literature. These images do not necessarily describe a literal diet in every theological sense. They express deprivation, the loss of ordinary nourishment, and the diminished condition awaiting those separated from the living. Food above carries more than strength. Bread reflects fields, irrigation, grinding stones, ovens, households, and shared labour. Beer requires grain, water, vessels, and skill. Dates connect people with gardens maintained across generations. To lose such food is to lose society itself. The dead consume what remains when cultivation ends. Dust requires no farmer, no baker, and no family table. It offers existence without abundance, continuation without pleasure, and memory without the full substance of life. Records from burial sites across ancient Mesopotamia confirm that families placed food, vessels, ornaments, tools, and personal objects with the dead. Such offerings varied greatly by place, period, and wealth, yet their presence reveals concern for what followed burial. The living behaved as though the departed still possessed needs. Some graves contained simple bowls and jars. Wealthier burials could include jewellery, weapons, musical instruments, animals, and attendants, though exceptional royal graves should not be treated as ordinary practice. Most people entered the earth with far less ceremony. The house below received them all. You move through a hall where faint voices gather like insects heard beyond a wall. No single conversation becomes clear. The sound seems made from names repeated by people who fear forgetting them, along with names no living mouth remembers anymore. Memory changes the condition of the dead. Mesopotamian families maintained relationships with ancestors through offerings, invocations, and household rituals. Water and food given in the proper manner could support the departed. A person with many descendants might receive regular care, while someone forgotten could face greater deprivation. This belief makes family continuity more than an emotional hope. Children preserve the dead through ritual attention. A household that survives keeps its ancestors connected to nourishment and identity. Loneliness becomes a practical danger. A quirky belief found in later Mesopotamian tradition suggests that neglected ghosts might rise from the underworld and trouble the living. Illness, disturbing dreams, or unexplained misfortune could be blamed upon spirits denied proper burial or offerings. Ritual specialists might identify the offended dead and prescribe food, water, prayer, or symbolic repair. Modern medicine explains sickness through physical causes, while psychology provides natural accounts of grief and recurring dreams. Yet the older belief reveals a powerful social truth. People fear that abandonment can continue beyond death. You hear water dripping somewhere in the distance. The sound is rare enough to draw attention from nearby shadows. Each drop strikes stone and vanishes, suggesting relief that arrives too slowly to satisfy anyone. The underworld is often portrayed as dry, but its relationship with water remains complex. The dead may thirst, while ritual water poured by descendants reaches them symbolically. Rivers and boundaries also appear in later descriptions of the journey below. Water connects worlds without erasing their separation. A family pours a cup into the ground, the soil receives it. The gesture becomes a message carried downward through belief, memory, and obligation. The act may seem small, yet within the ancient system it provides one of the few comforts available to the departed. You begin to notice differences among the inhabitants. Some appear less troubled, surrounded by traces of care. Others crouch farther from the imagined source of water, their forms thin and restless. Ancient texts sometimes suggest that burial circumstances, family support, number of children, and manner of death influence conditions below. A person honoured properly may fare better than one left unburied. Someone with descendants bringing offerings may possess advantages denied to the forgotten. This is not a moral judgment based upon virtue. It is a social judgment shaped by connection. Scholars continue to debate how literally ordinary Mesopotamians accepted these descriptions. Some view the dust and darkness as conventional poetic language. Others argue that funerary practice demonstrates widespread belief in a materially deprived afterlife. A further interpretation sees the imagery as social commentary, reflecting fears of poverty, exclusion, and loss of household identity. The house can contain every reading. It is a place below the earth, a symbol of death, and a mirror of social dependence. Life in Mesopotamia requires family, land, labour, and access to resources. Remove those supports, and even existence becomes thin. The dead lack the ability to cultivate their own fields. They cannot clear canals, grind grain, raise walls, or bargain in markets. Their condition depends upon what crosses the boundary from those still active above. This creates a quiet reversal. Parents once feed children. Children later feed ancestors. The household turns across generations, with care moving first downward through age, then downwards through the soil. A person without descendants risks disappearing from that cycle. The fear helps explain the importance of names, inheritance, and family continuity. To survive in memory requires someone willing to speak, pour, offer, and remember. Death begins in the body, but oblivion begins in the household. You enter another chamber where former rulers gather. Their crowns are dull, and their hands hold no active sceptres. They may retain recognition, yet their authority no longer shapes armies or harvests. Royal tombs above attempt to preserve grandeur through precious materials and elaborate ceremony. The house below reduces such displays to memory. Gold cannot produce sunlight, and carved titles cannot reopen the gate. Still, rank may not vanish completely. Some traditions imagine dead kings holding roles within the underworld or receiving special treatment. This possibility reflects the persistence of social hierarchy. Even in a realm that strips away much earthly power, ancient people may have found it difficult to imagine any world entirely without order. Equality and hierarchy coexist uneasily. All die, yet not all are remembered equally. All enter darkness, yet some arrive with rich burials and famous names. All depend upon the living, yet some families possess greater resources for ritual care. The underworld preserves the inequalities of life while reducing their practical reach. A distant scraping sound crosses the hall. One of the forgotten dead moves toward the trace of water, then stops when the sound ends. The figure remains still, as though movement has become too costly. There is no active torture here. The misery comes from reduction. Colour, taste, warmth, freedom, and human contact have thinned into faint impressions. The house does not roar. It waits. That quietness explains why the imagery remains disturbing. Violent punishment creates a clear cause and a defined enemy. Dust offers no enemy. Darkness expresses no anger. The dead suffer because life is absent, not because someone constantly chooses to harm them. Perhaps the house reflects the ancient experience of abandoned buildings. When a city quarter empties, roofs collapse, courtyards fill with dirt, and once familiar rooms become magnet. A home without voices begins resembling a tomb long before its walls disappear. The underworld enlarges that abandoned house until it contains humanity. You pass doorways leading into deeper rooms, each filled with people whose stories once mattered intensely. They loved, argued, planned, worried, and expected tomorrow. Now their voices have softened into the general murmur. This does not mean their lives were meaningless. It means meaning requires witnesses. The dead keep fragments of themselves, but the living hold the stronger portion of memory. A spoken name can briefly restore shape. An offering can renew connection. A story can carry someone back into lamplight for a moment. Without those acts, the dust thickens. The great house stretches beyond sight, its chambers multiplying beneath cities that continue to build above it. Every birth enlarges the future population of this place. Every family creates new obligations to those who will eventually vanish from the table. The underworld does not hurry them. It has room. You stand among the quiet inhabitants and understand why a return is so rare. The gate prevents escape, but the condition itself also weakens desire into stillness. The longer one remains without sunlight, food, touch, or purpose, the harder the upper world becomes to imagine. The house without return does not merely hold the dead, it slowly teaches them to belong there. A faint squeak of sandals moves through the dust as Enkidu approaches the boundary below. His steps sound too alive for the place, and every small noise seems to travel farther than it should. He carries no army, no crown, and no divine procession. Yet his journey may prove even more dangerous because he enters with human habits still clinging to him. Enkidu is remembered as the powerful companion of Gilgamesh, shaped by the wild before entering the world of cities. He knows open grasslands, animal movement, human friendship, and the fierce pride of a warrior. Such qualities make him strong above ground, but strength can become a liability where silence governs survival. The Sumerian story sends him downward because objects belonging to Gilgamesh have fallen through an opening into the underworld. Their exact identity remains uncertain. Translators have described them as a ball and a mallet, a drum and drumstick, or ceremonial objects whose original purpose has been lost. The uncertainty gives the scene a strange quality. Something familiar drops through the earth, and Enkidu agrees to retrieve it. The task sounds simple enough, almost domestic, until the opening beneath the ground reveals itself as a path governed by another set of rules. Gilgamesh understands the danger more clearly than his companion. He gives Enkidu a careful list of instructions, each one designed to hide the signs of living identity. The advice does not teach him how to fight. It teaches him how not to be noticed. He must not wear clean clothing. Fresh garments would make the dead recognize him as someone from the upper world, where water, labour, and households still renew the body. In the dusty kingdom, cleanliness becomes an announcement. He must not anoint himself with fine oil. The fragrance would spread through the still air, carrying cool memories of temples, banquet, marriage rooms, and wealthy homes. Scent can reveal a traveller long before a face becomes visible. He must not carry a throwing stick. If he brings a weapon, those struck by such objects in life may surround him. The tool would awaken memory among the dead and turn private suffering into collective anger. He must not wear sandals. Their sound against the ground would mark him as someone who still travels freely. The dead no longer move through roads with the same purpose, so the squeak of leather could become a signal of difference. He must not kiss the wife he loves. He must not strike the wife he dislikes. Affection and anger both belong to the active world, where relationships remain open to change. Below, such gestures would draw attention from those whose own households have vanished. The instructions continue with unsettling precision. Enkidu must restrain touch, scent, sound, appearance, and emotion. Every ordinary expression of life becomes dangerous because the underworld recognizes difference through the body. Records from Mesopotamian burial practice confirm the importance of clothing, oils, weapons, and personal objects in expressing identity. People entered graves with items tied to status, work, beauty, protection, or family memory. The story reverses that pattern by warning a living visitor to remove every sign that might distinguish him from the dead. Enkidu listens, but listening is not the same as obedience. His personality has never been built around quiet restraint. He is direct, physical, loyal, and accustomed to meeting danger through strength. The underworld requires another kind of intelligence. You follow him toward the opening, while dry air rises from below. The edge feels cold beneath your fingers, and darkness swallows every pebble that falls from the rim. No impact returns to tell you how deep the passage runs. Enkidu descends, The first mistake may seem harmless. Perhaps he washes or wears clothing too clean for the dust around him. Perhaps old habits return because the bulb controls me. So he comforts when fear grows, the dead notice so. He applies fragrant oil and its scent spreads where nothing green grows. Those nearby turn their heads. The aroma belongs to skin, warmed by sunlight, to cedar chests, to sponies, and to rooms where living people still touch one another. The fragrance betrays him. He brings the weapon, and memory gathers around it. Spirits who suffered from such objects recognize its shape. The dead may have lost warmth and freedom, but they have not lost every grievance. Morgsid. He wears sandals, and their sound becomes impossible to hide. Each step marks intention. Each squeak says that someone still chooses where to go. The rules appear odd only until their purpose becomes clear. Enkidu must imitate the dead closely enough to pass without disturbance. He cannot enter as a proud hero because heroism depends upon being seen. A quirky interpretation imagines these instructions as an ancient disguise manual. The idea has some playful truth. Enkidu is told to remove scent, mute sound, avoid clean clothing, and suppress recognizable behavior. He must become socially invisible in a kingdom where the wrong gesture can expose him. Yet the disguise is deeper than appearance. He must silence the emotional reflexes connecting him to home, love, irritation, pride, and urgency can reveal life as clearly as perfume. Scholars continue to debate whether the prohibitions reflect funerary ritual, ghost beliefs, literary humour, or practical customs associated with mourning. Some interpret them as reversals of normal social behaviour. Others see a lesson about respecting the laws of a foreign realm. The pattern supports both readings. When entering another city, a traveller learns local customs. When entering the underworld, every living custom becomes foreign. Enkidu fails because he carries his own world with him too openly. He sees someone he loves and reaches toward her. The gesture is instinctive, warmer than thought. He sees someone who once angered him and responds with equal immediacy. The dead gather around these actions because such intensity does not belong comfortably among them. The underworld seizes him. This seizure does not depend upon chains falling from the ceiling. The realm itself recognizes that he has broken the conditions of safe passage. He has allowed sound, scent, touch, and memory to announce that he remains alive. His failure reveals the true danger of descent. A traveller may understand the rules and still break them because the body remembers life automatically. Sandals make noise. Oil carries fragrance. Love reaches outward. Anger tightens the hand. Human nature becomes evidence. Enkidu cannot simply pretend to be dead because he still possesses attachments. He is known by whom he loves, what he resents, how he dresses, and how he moves through space. The underworld reads these details with perfect attention. You hear the sandals stop. The silence following them feels heavier than the sound itself. Shapes gather around Enkidu, and the passage behind him seems farther away. The objects he came to retrieve no longer matter. The task has become survival. His strength offers little help because the problem is not a single opponent. The entire realm holds him. Fighting one spirit would not reopen the path, shouting would only reveal him more clearly. The warning was never about courage. It was about adaptation. Enkidu entered, believing he could cross the boundary while remaining fully himself. The underworld teaches that passage demands concealment, restraint, and the temporary suspension of human identity. He has failed at all three. The tale carries gentle sarcasm beneath its darkness. Gilgamesh provides a careful list, and Enkidu proceeds to violate nearly every instruction. Even ancient heroes apparently suffered from the belief that warnings were intended for someone less capable. The humour does not soften the consequence. A broken rule below does not produce embarrassment, it produces capture. Enkidu becomes trapped among those who noticed everything he failed to hide. The story leaves you with a troubling possibility. The underworld does not need elaborate traps when ordinary habits can imprison the living. A clean garment, a familiar scent, a loving touch, or an angry gesture may be enough. The hidden realm watches for life through its smallest expressions. Enkidu stands surrounded by the dead, unable to recover the lost objects and unable to climb freely toward the opening. The path remains somewhere above, but the body that entered has marked itself too clearly. He came to retrieve something that fell through the earth. Now the earth refuses to return him. The rules of the lower realm are not written upon a public wall. They pass from one voice to another, carried through warnings, ritual speech, and the memory of those who understand how easily the dead can recognize the living. Each prohibition seems oddly specific until you notice that everyone controls a different part of the body. Clothing must not appear fresh. Oil must not release its fragrance. Sandals must not announce movement. Weapons must not awaken injury. Affection must not reach outward, and anger must not strike. The traveller is asked to become quiet in every sense. The body must stop telling its story. You feel rough cloth against your skin, chosen because it carries dust rather than brightness. The fabric scratches slightly at the shoulders, yet discomfort serves a purpose. Softness would belong to a household where garments are washed, repaired, folded, and stored. A clean robe is more dangerous than it appears. It reveals access to water, soap plants, labour, and ordinary care. The dead inhabit a realm where such renewal has ended, so cleanliness becomes a sign of impossible freshness. The prohibition against fine oil works through scent. Ancient Mesopotamians used oils in grooming, hospitality, healing, ritual, and preparation for major events. Aromatic substances could mark status and transform an ordinary body into one ready for worship, celebration, or intimacy. In darkness, perfume becomes a loud voice. The dead may no longer smell as the living do, yet the story treats fragrance as recognizable. It crosses distance without permission, carrying memories into spaces where memory can become restless. A visitor wearing oil brings the upper world into the lower realm through the air itself. That is why the rule matters. You move without sandals, feeling cold grit beneath your feet. The ground is uneven, and small stones press into the skin. Every step must remain deliberate, because pain can tempt the body to hurry. Sandals offer protection, but they also create sound, leather bends, straps pull, and soles scrape against packed earth. In a silent country, such noises announce direction and purpose. The dead do not travel toward fields, markets, or family homes. A living gate reveals expectation, because it assumes that a destination still matters. The squeak of sandals therefore carries more than sound, it carries intention. The weapon prohibition seems as easy to understand. A throwing stick, club, or blade can threaten anyone nearby, yet the warning reaches beyond immediate danger. Those killed or injured by the similar objects may recognize them and gather around the bearer. Objects preserve associations. A tool can remember work, a cup can remember celebration, a weapon can remember fear. The dead may respond not to the traveller's present intention, but to the shape of suffering attached to what he carries. This idea fits a culture where objects often held social and ritual meaning. Seals represented authority and staffs represented office. Jewellery expressed connection. Weapons communicated rank and danger. Material things formed part of identity rather than sitting silently beside it. The underworld reads them all. Records from burial archaeology confirm that personal objects accompanied many of the dead. Though practices varied across time and place, vessels, ornaments, tools, and weapons could preserve the social identity of the deceased. The warning to a living traveller reverses this pattern by demanding that identity remain concealed. You may carry nothing that causes recognition. The rules concerning love and anger are more disturbing because they regulate emotion rather than clothing. A traveller must not embrace the person he loves, even when reunion seems impossible to resist. He must not strike the person he resents, even when old anger returns suddenly. Both actions create bonds. Love declares attachment, anger declares unfinished conflict. The underworld watches both because each proves that the visitor remains entangled with human relationships. A dead person belongs to memory, while a living person still acts upon memory. The difference lies in motion. Love reaches forward, anger repeats itself. Either gesture shows that the traveller continues participating in the world of consequences. The lower realm requires stillness. This does not mean the dead possess no feelings. Ancient stories allow ghosts to hunger, complain, remember, and seek justice. Yet their emotions operate within a restricted condition. A living visitor brings active desire, and active desire threatens the quiet structure around him. You begin to understand why restraint matters more than bravery. Courage often expresses itself through action, but safe passage demands the refusal to act. The traveller must endure recognition without answering it. That is a harder test. Her mother may appear in the shadows, though she died many years earlier. Her voice sounds almost familiar, softened by dust and distance. Every instinct urges you to step closer. The rule forbids it. A former rival may stand nearby with the same expression remembered from life. Old irritation rises before thought can stop it. The hand tightens, and the body prepares to respond. The rule forbids that too. The underworld exploits ordinary reflexes because they reveal identity more reliably than spoken names. A traveller may lie with words, but the body betrays itself through touch, posture, scent, rhythm, and reaction. The hidden realm becomes a perfect observer. A fringe theory suggests that these restrictions preserve instructions used by ritual specialists entering states of controlled trance. Supporters imagine performers wearing rough garments, avoiding perfume, and suppressing movement while representing a symbolic descent. Evidence remains incomplete, and many scholars treat the theory cautiously. Still, the rules possess a practical rhythm suited to ritual performance. They control costume, gesture, sound, and emotional expression. A person following them would appear transformed before any audience, moving like someone who no longer belonged fully among the living. Perhaps that visual effect mattered. Scholars continue debating whether the prohibitions come from funerary custom, storytelling humour, religious ritual, or older traditions of ghost avoidance. Some view them as narrative devices designed to ensure failure. Others see a coherent code describing how the living must behave near the dead. The text may preserve several layers at once. A humorous layer appears because the instructions are memorable and easy to break. A ritual layer appears because each rule controls the body. A theological layer appears because the underworld recognizes life through sensory difference. The combination gives the list unusual power. You pass a narrow chamber where figures sit against the walls. Their faces remain turned downward, but you sense a tension behind their stillness. Every breath feels too warm. Every swallow sounds too loud. The rules do not tell you to stop breathing, because that would end the journey immediately. They instead reduce the signs of life without erasing life completely. The traveller must become almost dead while remaining alive enough to return. This narrow condition feels unnatural. Human beings survive by responding. They notice danger, seek comfort, call names, protect themselves, and move toward people they love. The lower realm demands the opposite. It asks for silence where speech feels necessary and stillness where touch feels merciful. The rules therefore attack habit. They do not require great intelligence to understand. Their difficulty lies in obedience under emotional pressure. Anyone can repeat the warning. Few can follow it when a lost face appears. You hear a familiar voice again. It does not call loudly. It says only one word. Perhaps your name. Perhaps something remembered from childhood. The body turns. That small movement may be enough. The underworld does not need to seize a traveller immediately. It can wait for one revealing gesture. A lifted hand, a quickened step, or a sudden breath exposes the difference between visitor and resident. The rules transform the journey into a test of self-erasure. To pass safely, you must conceal the very qualities that make return meaningful. Love must remain unexpressed. Anger must remain unresolved. Comfort must be refused. Protection must be surrendered. The traveller survives by behaving like someone who no longer cares to survive. This contradiction lies at the centre of the warning. The desire to return must remain hidden, because desire itself belongs to life. The lower realm detects purpose through movement toward it. You continue without touching anyone. Dust settles across your shoulders, dulling the fabric until you resemble the figures nearby. Your feet ache, but the pain remains private. No fragrance follows you, and no weapon swings at your side. For a few moments, the disguise holds. The rules have not made you invisible. They have made you unreadable. In the underworld, that may be the closest thing to safety. The darkness around Enkidu begins to change, not because light enters it, but because figures slowly separate from shadow. He sees the inhabitants of the lower realm more clearly now, each one carrying traces of a life once lived beneath the sun. Their conditions are not identical, and that difference becomes the first unsettling truth of his testimony. Some of the dead sit quietly with bowls before them, as though waiting for water or food from distant households. Others wander with restless movements, searching for attention that never arrives. A few appear settled, surrounded by the faint memory of descendants who still speak their names. Enkidu looks for patterns. He sees a man who left many sons behind. That spirit seems less deprived because several households remember him through offerings. Water reaches him more often, and his place among the dead appears more secure. Nearby sits a man with fewer descendants. His condition is thinner, his support less certain. The ancient account does not turn this into a moral lesson. It presents family continuity as a practical advantage beyond the grave. A person remembered by many receives more care. That idea reflects the social structure of ancient Mesopotamia, where households carried responsibility across generations. Sons and daughters inherited property, duties, debts, names, and ritual obligations. Family survival protected both the living and the dead. Records from legal tablets confirm the importance of inheritance and household continuity. Property could pass through carefully defined arrangements, while adoption sometimes ensured an heir where none existed. Such practices were not only about land, they preserved the social future of the family. In the underworld, that future becomes nourishment. Enkidu sees the spirit of someone whose body received proper burial. The figure rests more peacefully, connected to a grave known by relatives. A person denied burial appears in far worse condition, unsettled and unable to take a secure place among the dead. The contrast would have carried immediate force for ancient listeners. Burial did not simply dispose of the body, it moved the person into the correct relationship with the lower realm. Without that transition, the dead could remain dangerously close to the living. The improperly buried spirit may wander, complain, or attach itself to places where death occurred. Such beliefs gave urgency to recovering bodies after battle, accident, or disaster. Even an enemy's corpse could create ritual danger if left exposed without proper treatment. You sense the anxiety behind the custom. A body without a grave has no clear address. A spirit without an address becomes difficult to feed, remember, or calm. Enkidu continues among the shadows. He sees a person who died young, another who reached old age, and another taken suddenly. Their stories differ, yet the underworld receives each through the same irreversible boundary. The manner of death still shapes their condition, especially when violence, abandonment, or lack of burial disrupts the expected rituals. One figure catches his attention because the spirit died in fire. The account suggests that little or nothing remains below for such a person to recognize. The body has lost its familiar form, and the spirit's fate becomes difficult to describe. This image reveals an ancient concern with bodily integrity. Burial preserved a recognizable connection between corpse and grave, name and descendant. Fire could break that connection in ways that seemed deeply troubling. A fringe interpretation claims such passages preserve memories of rare cremation rituals belonging to an older population. Archaeological evidence shows varied treatment of bodies across Mesopotamian history, but the literary scene does not prove a forgotten cremation religion. The speculation remains possible only at the edges. What matters within the story is loss of form. Enkidu also sees those who died without anyone to mourn them. Their silence differs from the quiet of the properly remembered. It feels empty rather than peaceful. A lament once gave structure to grief. Family members, professional mourners, and ritual specialists could speak the dead person's name, describe the loss, and guide emotion into recognized forms. Without lament, death remained socially unfinished. The unwept dead possess no public ending. Scholars continue debating how literally these individual fates should be read. Some see a catalogue of popular beliefs. Others interpret the passage as social instruction, encouraging burial, marriage, children, and proper family duty. A literary reading emphasizes its emotional purpose, using varied destinies to deepen Gilgamesh's fear of death. All three views can coexist. The testimony teaches custom, expresses theology, and exposes grief at the same time. Ancient stories often preserve belief most clearly when they also serve practical social needs. Enkidu moves deeper and encounters forgotten rulers. Their posture still suggests authority, but their surroundings do not obey them. One may have commanded thousands above, yet here he waits for offerings like anyone else. This does not erase hierarchy completely. Kings may receive richer burial and stronger remembrance. Their monuments may preserve names for centuries. Royal power shrinks once removed from living institutions. A throne needs to stare to needs subjects. A title needs listeners. The underworld contains former kings without active kingdoms. Their old commands remain attached to memory, but no canal is cleared because they order it. No army gathers, no messenger runs through the night. Enkidu sees priests, labourers, warriors, parents, children, and people whose occupations have become impossible to identify. Dust has blurred the differences, but not erased them entirely. A potter may still hold the gesture of shaping clay. A singer may move lips without producing a song. A soldier may sit with hands that remember a weapon no longer present. The body preserves habits even when the work is gone. This detail makes the dead feel painfully human. They are not abstract souls floating beyond personality. They remain connected to unfinished patterns of movement, affection, fear, and duty. And Enkidu recognizes that death does not create a clean new beginning. It carries fragments of the old life into a weakened condition. He sees a child sitting near a shadow who may have been a parent. The image remains quiet, without explanation. Ancient texts rarely offer modern comfort concerning children who die. That silence can feel harsh. Perhaps the story assumes reunion. Perhaps it acknowledges only loss. Scholars cannot recover every belief from a few surviving lines, and the missing details leave emotional gaps larger than the physical breaks in the tablets. Enkidu does not turn away. He sees the dead who were loved, the dead who were feared, and the dead almost entirely forgotten. Their conditions differ according to burial, family, remembrance, and circumstance, yet none appear restored to the fullness of life. The lower realm offers degrees of deprivation rather than clear reward. This is one of the strongest differences between Sumerian underworld thought and later systems centered on moral judgment. The dead are not sorted primarily by virtue and wickedness. Their fate often depends more upon social bonds and ritual cares. A generous person without descendants may suffer neglect. A difficult ruler with a famous tomb may receive abundant offerings. The system reflects the household world from which it emerged, not an abstract court of perfect justice. That can feel deeply unfair. It may also reveal how ancient people understood survival. No one existed alone. Identity depended upon family, city, temple, work, and memory. Keth weakened those connections without replacing them with an individual paradise. Enkidu's testimony becomes a warning about isolation. The worst fate is not always pain, it is being unburied, unnamed, unfed, and forgotten. A spirit without social connection becomes almost invisible, and invisibility below is not safety. It is erasure. A faint sound reaches Enkidu from somewhere nearby. One of the forgotten dead repeats a name, perhaps hoping another voice will answer. No response comes. The name fades into dust. Enkidu understands that the living possess extraordinary power without realizing it. They can pour water, prepare food, maintain graves, tell stories, and speak names aloud. These small acts alter conditions in the unseen world. Memory becomes a bridge no gatekeeper can fully close. You feel the weight of that idea as Enkidu turns toward the path of return. He has entered expecting objects, dangers, and perhaps hidden treasure. Instead, he carries knowledge about human dependence. The dead remain tied to the living through fragile threads. A grave can be damaged, a family can disappear, a name can be misread, forgotten, or buried beneath another city. Every form of remembrance remains vulnerable to time. Enkidu has seen what happens when those threads break. The lower realm does not need flames or monsters to terrify him. It only needs a silent figure waiting for someone who will never come. A small object slips from Gilgamesh's hand and disappears through a narrow opening in the earth. There is no flash, no warning, and no dramatic sound. It simply falls beyond reach, carrying with it the strange certainty that some losses begin quietly. The opening appears ordinary at first. It may be a crack in packed ground, a shaft, a ritual pit, or a break leading into hidden depth. The poem does not offer a modern diagram. It gives only enough detail to make the descent possible and the return uncertain. That uncertainty transforms the fallen object. Above ground, it belonged to play, ceremony, music, or royal display, depending upon how the ancient terms are understood. Below ground, it becomes unreachable property. Its value changes because distance has placed it outside human control. You kneel beside the opening and feel cool air rising from beneath the warm soil. Dust gathers around the edge, where small stones loosen under your fingers. The darkness below seems to absorb shape, sound, and intention equally. Nothing answers when you call. This crack between worlds reveals a powerful Mesopotamian idea. The underworld is not always approached through a grand gate seen from a distant road. Sometimes the boundary appears within ordinary ground, close enough for an object to cross accidentally. The living world may be thinner than it seems. Ancient settlements were built and rebuilt upon the remains of earlier structures. Floors covered older floors. Houses rose over abandoned walls. graves, drains, storage pits, and forgotten rooms, a person walking through a busy courtyard might stand above centuries of buried human activity. Archaeological excavation confirms this layered pattern across Mesopotamian cities. Repeated construction created raised settlement mounds containing homes, temples, workshops, streets, and burials from many generations. The earth beneath a house could therefore contain both family history and social oblivion. Every floor concealed another world. The poem turns that physical reality into sacred geography. An object falls through an opening and crosses from use into loss. The crack becomes more than damaged ground. It becomes a line separating possession from memory. Gilgamesh looks downward, frustrated by the disappearance. A ruler expects objects to remain available when summoned. Servants retrieve what is dropped. Craftsmen repair what is broken, and officials replace what is missing. The earth refuses such service. Its silence confronts royal authority with a boundary no command can easily reverse. Gilgamesh may govern walls, roads, labor, and treasure, yet the opening below does not recognize ownership in the same way. What falls becomes subject to another realm. This idea would have felt familiar within burial practice. Personal possessions placed in graves crossed from active circulation into sacred custody. A cup once used at meals could become part of the dead person's equipment. Jewelry once worn in public might disappear beneath soil forever. Burial transforms property through placement. The crack performs a similar transformation without ceremony. It takes an object before anyone is prepared to release it. That sudden transfer creates the emotional force of the scene. A ritual burial says farewell. An accidental fall says not yet. You imagine Gilgamesh reaching into the opening, perhaps testing its depth with a stick or rope. The darkness offers no easy measure. A shaft that appears narrow at the surface may widen below, leading into chambers impossible to see. The object remains somewhere beneath him. A curious fringe interpretation suggests the fallen items were parts of a sacred drum used to communicate with spirits. Supporters argue that their descent symbolized the loss of ritual control over the underworld. The ancient vocabulary remains uncertain, and no surviving artifact proves this reading. Still, the possibility adds an eerie layer. A musical object falling into silence would carry special meaning. Sound belongs to gatherings, rhythm, ceremony, and human coordination beneath the earth. That sound becomes trapped. Perhaps the underworld does not merely take objects. Perhaps it takes their function. A drum without a player becomes wood and hide. A ball without movement becomes a shape in dust. A royal symbol without witnesses becomes material without authority. Loss strips objects just as surely as gates strip travelers. Scholars continue debating the meaning of the fallen items. Some favor sporting equipment, others musical instruments, while another group sees ceremonial emblems whose use has vanished from memory. The disagreement persists because language changes, and objects once common can become unrecognizable after thousands of years. The uncertainty is valuable. It reminds you that ancient people filled their lives with tools, games, sounds, and customs that no surviving text fully explains. History preserves names without always preserving experience. The crack holds that forgotten experience. You can see the object falling, but you cannot say exactly what it was. Its meaning disappears almost as completely as its physical form. The poem therefore stages two losses at once. The character loses possession. The modern reader loses certainty. This double absence creates a subtle bridge between archaeology and myth. Excavators often recover objects without knowing their exact use. A shaped piece of clay. Wood, shell, or metal may survive while its name, sound, gesture, and social meaning vanish. Material remains, context falls away. In the story, Context remains only partly, while the object falls away. Each side of the divide possesses what the other lacks. The crack also resembles a grave before burial. It is an opening where the living stand above and the dead receive below, yet no body lies there, and no mourning ritual prepares the transition. The ordinary rules have been interrupted. Enkidu offers to descend because friendship makes another person's loss feel recoverable. His loyalty turns the opening from a symbol into a task. He believes courage and physical strength can restore what the earth has taken. The decision is generous. It is also mistaken. Some boundaries become dangerous precisely when human affection refuses to accept them. A friend reaches down because leaving the object below feels like surrender, yet the underworld treats retrieval as intrusion. This does not make loyalty foolish, it makes loyalty vulnerable. You feel rough earth against your palm as the opening seems to widen in darkness. The desire to recover what was lost becomes stronger, because the loss appears small enough to reverse. That is how many dangerous. No one enters the lower realm hoping to become trapped. They enter to retrieve a person, an object, a secret, a memory, or a sense of control. The first motive often seems reasonable. The cost appears later. The crack becomes a symbol of rupture. It divides the moment when something belongs to daily life from the moment when it belongs to memory. A dropped object, a buried body, a ruined city, and a forgotten name all cross similar thresholds. They remain real, but no longer accessible in the same way. This distinction matters because loss does not always mean non-existence. The object still lies somewhere below, the dead still inhabit the great house, the ruined city still rests beneath newer walls. What has vanished may continue beyond reach. That possibility can comfort or disturb, depending upon how deeply you look. A modern person might imagine recovering the object with equipment, light, rope, and careful excavation. Ancient listeners understood that this was not merely a physical shaft. The opening connected worlds whose laws could not be defeated by tools alone. Technology solves depth. It does not solve jurisdiction. The underworld boundary is powerful because crossing it changes ownership, status, and condition. An object below is no longer simply misplaced. A person below is no longer simply absent. The crack rewrites relationship. Gilgamesh remains above, where speech, command, and friendship still function. Enkidu enters below, where each of those qualities becomes dangerous. The gap between them may be narrow in distance, yet enormous in lore. One can stand almost directly above another and still be unreachable. The image feels unsettling because it resembles grief. The dead may lie beneath a floor, inside a nearby tomb, or within a cemetery visible from home. Physical closeness does not restore conversation. The gate is not measured only in miles. It is measured in changed condition. You remain beside the opening as evening cools the ground. A breeze moves across the surface, carrying the scent of dust and river water. Below, no wind answers. The fallen object has become a message without words. It says that the boundary can open suddenly. It says that what crosses may not return unchanged. It says that the living world rests upon hidden depths capable of receiving more than anyone intends to give. The crack remains small, almost harmless in appearance. People may step around it, cover it, or forget where it lies. Yet beneath that narrow darkness, the road continues toward a kingdom with gates, judges, and laws. The earth does not need to split widely. One opening is enough. The oldest kings in Sumerian memory do not rule at the beginning of time. They arrive within a world already divided, already governed, and already watched by powers whose origins lie beyond human record. The underworld belongs to that older order, waiting beneath every city before the first throne receives a name. Ancient king lists present kingship as something descending from heaven, not something invented gradually by ambitious men. The institution appears as a gift, a burden, and a system granted from above. Cities receive it in sequence, as though human rule moves across the land according to decisions made elsewhere. The lower realm stands outside that transfer. No king brings kingship to Ereshkigal, no council appoints her, no temple assembly raises her to office through ceremony. Her authority seems embedded within the structure of existence itself, making human sovereignty appear recent by comparison. You feel the difference while standing in a silent hall where no royal inscription covers the walls. Human kings carve names repeatedly because memory must be defended. The queen below requires no monument. Every burial confirms her jurisdiction without speaking her title. Records from early Mesopotamia show rulers competing to build temples, repair canals, and preserve their names through inscriptions. A king might claim divine favor, ancient ancestry, or unmatched strength. Such claims worked only among the living, where scribes, priests, soldiers, and laborers repeated them. The underworld predates their audience. This creates a hidden timeline beneath political history. Cities rise, dynasties change, and royal houses disappear. Yet the lower realm remains constant. It receives rulers from every period without changing its fundamental law. A dynasty may last 2 centuries. A city may dominate a region for several generations. The kingdom below measures time through endless arrivals rather than reign lengths. That perspective reduces human history to a surface pattern. You imagine the first settlement taking shape beside a river channel. Families press reeds into walls, store grain in jars, and bury their dead beneath floors or beyond the inhabited space. No palace exists, no written law survives, and no royal title has been invented. Still, death requires a place. The underworld therefore belongs to human experience before formal kingship, even if later texts describe it through the language of courts and officials. The institution may become more elaborate in literature, but the fear beneath it is older than bureaucracy. People lose parents before they build palaces. They bury children before they compose royal hymns. They speak to the dead before scribes press signs into clay. The lower realm may be the oldest imagined kingdom because mortality creates subjects before politics creates citizens. Every family understands disappearance long before it understands administration. This does not prove that one fixed underworld belief existed from the earliest villages. Archaeology cannot recover complete ideas from silent graves, and burial does not always reveal theology. Scholars continue debating how far later texts preserve genuinely ancient traditions. The uncertainty matters. Some historians argue that complex underworld systems developed alongside urban institutions, borrowing judges, gates, and offices from the cities above. Others believe urban language gave formal shape to much older beliefs about ancestors, burial, and dangerous spirits. Both possibilities can be true. An ancient fear may receive a new vocabulary. A family ghost becomes a citizen of the great house. A burial pit becomes an entrance. A local spirit becomes part of a divine administration. The system grows without erasing its deepest roots. A curious fringe theory proposes that stories of pre-human rulers preserve memories of an advanced civilization destroyed before Sumerian cities emerged. Supporters often point to impossibly long reigns in king lists and divine names appearing before ordinary dynasties. Historians generally interpret such numbers through mythic, symbolic, and scribal traditions rather than hidden technology. The idea remains popular because the texts genuinely place order before familiar history. They describe a world where divine assemblies, cosmic regions, and sacred offices already function before human kingship settles into named cities. Something comes first, even if it is mythic rather than archaeological. You sense why this attracts imagination. Written history begins late compared with human memory. People lived, migrated, mourned, worshipped, and feared for countless generations before the earliest surviving tablets. The silence before writing is enormous. Sumerian literature fills that silence with divine activity. Gods separate regions, establish powers, assign duties, and determine destinies. Humanity enters a world whose major structures are already in place. Humans do not design the cosmos. They inherit it. The underworld becomes one of those inherited structures. Its gates are not built by a human king. Its judges do not learn law from mortal courts. Its queen does not seek recognition from any city council. The system below appears prior to human permission. This may explain why no heroic conquest can simply destroy it. A warrior can defeat another warrior. A king can capture another city. A god may even challenge another deity. The underworld represents a condition deeper than opposition. To overthrow it would require undoing mortality itself. Some Mesopotamian stories do imagine temporary return, substitution, or divine negotiation. These exceptions do not weaken the system. They reveal its strength, because every escape demands a price, a replacement, or special intervention. No one leaves through personal preference. The hidden timeline therefore contains cycles rather than simple progress. Human beings rise, organize, build, and die. Cities flourish, collapse, and become foundations for new cities. Kingdoms appear permanent until another language fills their streets. Below, the dead accumulate. The lower realm grows through every failure of permanence above. It becomes the archive no scribe controls, filled with people whose names outnumber every surviving tablet. You walk through imagined chambers containing generations from before writing. Hunters, herders, farmers, potters, mothers, children, and elders remain without inscriptions. No museum label can identify them. No king list records their lives. They belong to the deepest human past. The written traditions arrive later and place them within a structure of gates, judges, and royal authority. Myth gives anonymous death a geography. That gift carries both comfort and unease. A place is less frightening than pure disappearance, yet a permanent place can become frightening in another way. The underworld promises continuation without freedom, memory without full restoration, and order without consent. It is not nothing. It may be worse than nothing. Scholars at major universities continue examining how early Mesopotamian cosmology developed from social life, ritual practice, and changing institutions. No single model explains every text because traditions shifted across centuries and cities. The debate remains open over what came first. Did people imagine the dead as a community, then shape that community into a kingdom? Did urban courts inspire the image of divine judges? Did burial customs preserve older beliefs that scribes later organized into literature? The tablets do not answer directly. They preserve a finished system without showing every stage of construction. You see the building, but not every hand that raised it. That absence creates the sense of something ancient even to the ancients. Sumerian scribes often write as though divine arrangements belong to a distant age beyond ordinary recollection. The language of origins places cosmic decisions far behind human history. Long before recorded history, the gates are already there. In a time no living person remembers, the judges already sit. Before the first known dynasty claims legitimacy, Ereshkigal already rules. These statements belong to mythic chronology, not excavated fact, yet myths reveal how a culture places itself within time. The Sumerians did not always imagine themselves at the beginning. They often imagined themselves inheriting powers, duties, and disasters from an older divine past. Humanity enters late. That idea quietly unsettles the pride of civilization. Writing, kingship, irrigation, temples, and law may transform society, but they do not create the deepest boundaries. The first scribe cannot rewrite death, The first king cannot annex the world below. The first city wall cannot keep mortality outside. You feel the night air moving across an ancient plain. No temple rises yet, no monumental gate casts a shadow. Small fires burn near houses built from reed and clay. Someone has died. A family gathers, touches the body, prepares a grave, and speaks words now completely lost. Their gestures contain no written theology, yet they already confront the same hidden boundary. The underworld begins wherever return becomes impossible. Its later throne room, gatekeeper, and judges may reflect centuries of cultural development. Beneath those details lies an older human recognition. The dead go somewhere beyond reach. The living remain responsible for remembering them. The place beyond reach must possess an order, even when that order cannot be seen. Perhaps this is why the lower realm feels older than kingship. It emerges from grief, and grief does not wait for civilization. Human rule begins when people organize power. The underworld begins when people notice absence. A soft scraping sound travels through the chamber, as though unseen hands are arranging tablets upon a stone shelf. The underworld begins to resemble more than a place. It resembles a system, assembled from offices, rules, exchanges, and repeated acts that keep every realm from spilling into another. The pattern appeared through separate stories, yet its pieces fit together with unusual precision. A gate controls entry, a keeper identifies the traveller, 7 thresholds reduce foreign power, a queen receives authority within the deepest chamber. Judges confirm the condition of those brought before them. None of these elements stands alone. Together, they form a hidden administration beneath the earth. The structure is not chaotic, improvised, or driven only by the moods of one deity. It operates through assigned roles, recognized procedures, and consequences that remain consistent even when a powerful visitor resists them. This is how institutions survive. Ancient Mesopotamian cities depended upon networks of officials rather than a ruler acting alone. Scribes recorded grain, labor, animals, land, and offerings. Overseers supervised workshops. Gatekeepers controlled movement. Messengers carried exact instructions between temples, palaces, and distant estates. The lower realm reflects that same habit of organization. Ereshkigal rules, but Neti controls access. The judges pronounce fate, but they do not guard the entrance. Messengers carry decisions, while other beings execute them. Each figure possesses a defined function within the whole. Power becomes distributed. That division prevents confusion. A gatekeeper does not claim the throne. A judge does not abandon the court to wander among the dead. A messenger does not rewrite the command entrusted to him. The system works because every role remains limited. You can imagine the arrangement as a series of circles beneath the earth. The outer boundary separates living territory from the road below. The gates regulate deeper movement. The court determines status. The great house receives those whose passage has been completed. Every circle narrows possibility. The traveller begins with choices, possessions, relationships, and claims. Each stage removes one form of freedom, until the person reaches a condition suited to the lower realm. The descent is therefore not merely movement through space, it is classification through stages. A person becomes a resident gradually. This pattern resembles the operation of temple and palace households, where individuals were placed within categories. Workers received rations according to role, age, gender, or status. Goods entered storerooms, were counted, sealed, and distributed through recognized channels. Records from ancient administrative tablets confirm this extraordinary attention to categories. Grain, wool, beer, livestock, tools, and labor could be tracked through lists whose precision still surprises modern readers. The people who imagined the underworld belonged to a culture trained to see order through allocation. Becomes organized. The dead are not merely many, they occupy conditions shaped by burial, remembrance, family support, and manner of arrival. The judges recognize difference, while the great house contains those differences within one permanent population. This creates a system both universal and unequal. Everyone enters mortality, yet not everyone receives the same care. Everyone passes beyond ordinary life, yet some arrive with famous names and strong descendants. The structure preserves hierarchy while reducing its force. A king may receive more offerings than a forgotten labourer, but neither reclaims the upper world. The system allows distinction without escape. A curious fringe idea proposes that the 7 gates represent 7 levels of an ancient secret society, each guarded by a ritual officer. Supporters compare the removal of regalia with initiation ceremonies found in much later traditions. No direct evidence connects the Sumerian poem with such an organization. The theory persists because the structure feels deliberately staged. Initiation, burial, political submission, and divine descent all share a common pattern. A person leaves ordinary space, crosses controlled thresholds, surrenders familiar identity, receives judgment, and emerges changed or remains contained. The underworld narrative may draw power from that universal sequence. Scholars continue debating whether the system should be treated as a coherent theology or as a literary arrangement assembled from traditions that never formed one official doctrine. Some historians emphasize differences between cities, periods, and texts. Others identify stable ideas appearing across centuries. The disagreement reflects the nature of the evidence. No central council issued one approved map of the lower realm. No surviving tablet announces itself as the final guide to death. Scribes copied stories serving different temples, audiences, and purposes. Yet repetition creates structure. The gatekeeper returns. The 7 gates recur. Ereshkigal remains queen. The dead inhabit a dusty land. Escape requires divine intervention, substitution, or exceptional permission. These patterns are too persistent to dismiss as random invention. I begin to see the underworld as a machine made from relationships rather than metal. Authority flows downward through command. Information moves inward through messengers. Bodies move through gates. Offerings move downward through ritual. Nothing travels freely. Movement always requires a channel. This principle mirrors the landscape above, where water must follow canals, grain must enter storehouses, and goods must pass through accounted hands. Uncontrolled flow threatens order, whether the substance is water, wealth, people, or spirits. The underworld regulates the most dangerous flow of all. It controls passage between life and death. If the dead returned without restraint, households would remain permanently exposed to grief, fear, and unfinished obligation. If the living entered without restriction, death would become negotiable. If gods crossed freely, divine jurisdictions would lose meaning. The system prevents these possibilities through boundaries. It also allows rare exceptions, though every exception confirms the rule. Inanna can return only because other divine powers intervene, and a substitute must be provided. Enkidu can communicate knowledge only through special circumstances. The dead may visit dreams or trouble households, but such movement appears irregular and often dangerous. Freedom never comes without cost. This suggests a hidden economy beneath the earth. Entry requires surrender, release requires exchange. Continued nourishment depends upon offerings. Memory functions like a resource sent from the living to the dead. The lower realm receives bodies and returns warnings, dreams, or obligations. A substitution reveals this economy most clearly. One life may stand in place of another. The arrangement appears harsh, yet it preserves balance. The underworld loses no subject without receiving compensation. Nothing is simply forgiven. Ancient Mesopotamian law and administration often relied upon equivalence. repayment, substitution, and measured obligation. A debt could require goods, labor, or property. A ritual mistake might demand an offering. A broken relationship could be repaired through formal exchange. The Hidden Kingdom uses similar logic. This does not prove that scribes copied earthly bureaucracy directly into myth. Social institutions and religious imagination likely shaped one another over long periods. People understood cosmic order through familiar systems, while sacred ideas gave earthly authority deeper meaning. The resemblance moves in both directions. A king may claim that his rule reflects divine order. A temple administrator may treat careful accounting as sacred duty. A myth may portray the underworld as a court because courts already express the power to classify and decide. The system becomes believable because it feels familiar. You hear the quiet movement of unseen officials. A name is repeated. A decision is recorded somewhere beyond sight. Though no clay tablet may be involved. The dead shift according to rules no visitor fully understands. This is not disorder. It is an order hidden from those above. The possibility feels slightly unsettling because unseen systems often shape life more powerfully than visible individuals. A ruler can die, an official can be replaced, a city can fall. The system may continue. Ereshkigal herself belongs to that permanence, but even her authority appears bound to the role she occupies. She rules the lower realm, yet she also remains confined by its necessity. She cannot simply transform it into a garden without altering the balance of existence. The queen serves the system while commanding it. This makes the underworld larger than any single deity. It is not merely Ereshkigal's personal kingdom. It is a cosmic function requiring gates, judgment, containment, memory, and exchange. Remove one element, and the boundary becomes unstable. The pattern extends beyond death. Heaven has assemblies and decrees. Cities have walls and rulers. Temples have restricted chambers. Households have ancestors and obligations. Every level of existence seems arranged through roles and boundaries. The cosmos resembles nested institution. Human beings occupy one layer within that greater structure. They build their own systems because order appears to govern everything around them. Canons, laws, calendars, and rituals become attempts to imitate a universe already organized. Perhaps that is why the Hidden Kingdom feels inevitable. It is not presented as an accident or a temporary punishment. It belongs to the architecture of reality. Life above and death below remain distinct because the system maintains their separation. You stand quietly while the pattern settles into place. Gate, keeper, threshold, queen, judges, residents, offerings, and substitutes form one complete sequence. The story is no longer only about a forbidden door. It is about a structure built to ensure that every crossing has a consequence. The room smells of warm bread, damp clay, and the faint smoke of juniper as a family gathers near a low table. One place remains empty, though everyone knows who once sat there. A cup of water is poured carefully, not for the living, but for someone whose name still belongs within the house. This small act reveals the deepest fear hidden inside Sumerian burial custom. Death is frightening, but forgetting may be worse. A person can enter the lower realm with proper rites and still become weak if no descendant remembers to offer food, water, or bound speech. Humanity's bond with the dead therefore continues through duty. The grave does not end the relationship. It changes the direction of care, turning memory into something practical, regular, and necessary. Families pour water into the ground because thirst below is imagined as real. They prepare offerings because hunger does not disappear completely. They speak names because identity fades when no living voice carries it. The ritual is quiet. No grand procession is required every day. A cup, a small portion of food, and a remembered name can hold the connection. The gesture matters because someone chooses to perform it. Ancient Mesopotamian records confirm that households maintained ceremonies for deceased relatives. Offerings could be made at graves within domestic spaces, or during appointed observances. The exact practice changed across cities and centuries, yet the purpose remained recognizable. The dead depended upon remembrance. This dependence gave children a responsibility extending far beyond inheritance. A son or daughter did not merely receive property, they also received the obligation to keep family identity alive through offerings, names, and proper treatment of graves. A household without descendants faced a terrible uncertainty. Who would pour the water? Who would repair the tomb? Who would remember which name belonged to which ancestor once the oldest relatives had died? These questions explain why adoption could hold profound importance in ancient law. A person without a natural heir might arrange for someone else to inherit, provide care, and continue ritual obligations. The legal bond could secure both earthly property and imagined survival below. This agreement linked economics with eternity. Modern people often separate grief from administration. Ancient households could not always do so. Property, burial, family duty, and memory formed one connected system. A field might support the person responsible for offerings. A house might pass to someone who promised continued care. A legal tablet could preserve obligations reaching beyond the owner's death. Even mourning required structure. You hear the scrape of a bowl against the table as an elder divides food. One portion remains untouched. Its presence gives absence a shape. The family speaks about the dead person, perhaps recalling a habit, a joke, or a difficult temper. Memory does not need to be perfect to remain powerful. It only needs repetition. Names survive through use. Sumerian rulers understood this principle clearly. They placed inscriptions upon bricks, statues, foundation deposits, and temple objects. Their words often asked future rulers to preserve the inscription rather than erase it. A destroyed name threatened more than reputation. It threatened continuity. A king whose name vanished from monuments risked being removed from public memory. A common person faced the same danger within a smaller circle when descendants disappeared or neglected their duties. The dead lost their remaining connection to the upper world. The worst fate was not always punishment. It was becoming unclaimed. A forgotten spirit possessed no stable place at the family table and no reliable source of ritual care. Such a being might wander, weaken, or become troublesome. The living feared neglected ghosts, partly because neglect carried moral weight. A restless spirit represented a broken relationship. The dead had been denied proper transition, proper burial, or proper remembrance. Their return signaled that the living had failed to maintain the boundary. A quirky belief held that unexplained household disturbances could be caused by an ancestor offended by poor offerings. A sudden noise, recurring nightmare, or stubborn illness might be interpreted as a complaint from below. Modern explanations offer many natural causes for such experiences. Houses settle, grief disturbs sleep, and illness follows physical processes. Yet the belief reveals how seriously ancient families treated memory. Forgetting was not passive. It could create consequences. The ritual specialist might be called to identify which spirit required attention. Food, water, prayer, or repaired burial could restore balance. The solution was not always to drive the ghost away. Sometimes the solution was to remember properly. This distinction matters because the dead were not treated only as threats. They remained members of the household, though their needs had changed. Care and fear existed together. The family might love an ancestor and still worry about offending that ancestor. Respect often grows stronger when the person respected cannot explain what is wrong. The unseen creates uncertainty. Scholars continue debating how widely such practices were observed outside wealthy or literate households. Written evidence often comes from temples, palaces, or families able to preserve tablets. Poorer people may have followed simpler customs that left fewer traces. Archaeology offers partial answers. Graves reveal vessels, personal objects, food remains, and repeated use of burial spaces, yet material evidence cannot always distinguish affection, fear, habit, and religious belief. The same bowl can hold many meanings. It may nourish the dead, honor memory, display status, or satisfy community expectation. Ritual rarely belongs to one explanation alone. You step outside into a courtyard where evening air cools the packed earth. A small opening in the ground receives water. The liquid darkens the soil and disappears quickly. Nothing rises to meet it. The act still feels complete. Perhaps that is because ritual does not require visible proof. Its power lies in maintaining relationship across uncertainty. The living cannot see whether the dead receive the offering, yet they continue because not acting would feel like abandonment. This is humanity's role within the hidden system. People cannot control the underworld, but they can send care toward it. They cannot reopen the gate, but they can prevent a name from fading completely. They can nourish memory. The responsibility is humble, almost domestic. Cosmic order does not ask most people to confront Ereshkigal or pass through 7 gates. It asks them to remember family, honor burial, and maintain the fragile ties between generations. The grand mystery returns to the table. A name spoken beside bread becomes part of the architecture connecting worlds. A cup of water poured into soil travels farther than any messenger can confirm. Perhaps the ancient fear of forgetting grew from ordinary experience. People watched abandoned houses collapse and family graves disappear beneath new construction. They saw names vanish when no child repeated them. Memory proved temporary. Even kings could be forgotten. Seas once filled with temples and markets eventually became mounds crossed by shepherds. Languages ceased to be spoken. Royal names remained buried until modern excavators recovered them from broken clay. The danger was not imagined. Oblivion happened everywhere. The underworld tradition gave that danger a human form. A forgotten spirit sitting without water expresses what happens when social connection ends. The image is simple enough to cross thousands of years. You may not share the ancient theology, yet the fear remains familiar. People still preserve photographs, repeat stories, visit graves, name children after relatives, and keep objects belonging to the dead. They continue the same struggle against disappearance. Technology changes the containers, but not the desire. Names move from clay to paper, stone, film, and glowing screens. The hope remains that something of a person will survive inside another person's attention. Perhaps that is the true offering. Food decays, water sinks into soil, monuments crack. Attention gives the dead a temporary place among the living. The family returns to the table. Conversation grows quieter as night settles beyond the doorway. The empty place remains visible, but it no longer feels entirely empty. A story has filled it. The ancestor exists for a little longer through voice, gesture, and shared memory. No one knows whether the lower realm hears, yet the household has done what it can. The gate beneath the earth stays closed. The name crosses anyway. The tablet rests beneath steady museum light, its broken surface holding more uncertainty than any complete monument could contain. Each missing corner invites a question, and each surviving line seems to offer several answers without choosing among them. You look at the clay and realize that the mystery may not lie in what the scribes wrote, but in what they assumed everyone already knew. One scholar sees religion, another sees ritual, a third sees political order, someone else sees poetic geography, shaped by burial customs, city gates, and the fear of losing social identity. The same passage can support each reading because ancient stories rarely separate human experience into modern categories. To call the text only a myth may sound dismissive, as though the story were merely invented entertainment. Yet myth in ancient Mesopotamia could explain institutions, preserve ritual patterns, explore divine relationships, and give a structure to experiences that resisted ordinary speech. Death was one of those experiences. The hidden gate beneath the earth may therefore describe a sacred truth without describing a physical doorway. It may be real within the language of ritual, memory, and social order, even if no traveller could locate it using distance and direction. This distinction is important. A city gate exists in brick and timber, but it also represents authority. A grave exists in soil and stone, but it also represents separation. A temple door exists physically, yet it can mark passage between ordinary and sacred conditions. The underworld gate may operate in the same way. It is a place, a symbol, and a rule at once. Researchers from Oxford, Yale, and major American universities have examined Mesopotamian underworld texts through language, archaeology, religious studies, and social history. Their conclusions do not form one final interpretation. Instead, they reveal several overlapping structures within the stories. The gate controls access. The stripping of regalia reduces status. The judges transform arrival into legal condition. The dusty house reflects fears about burial, nourishment, and memory. These elements create a coherent system, but coherence does not prove literal geography. Human imagination often builds complete worlds to express truths that cannot be measured directly. The question becomes more subtle. Did ancient audiences believe that a gate named Ganza existed beneath the earth in the same way they believed a city gate stood within a wall? Some probably did. Others may have understood the image through ritual language, poetic convention, or inherited tradition. A farmer, priest, scribe, ruler, and mourning parent may not have heard the same story in the same way. The farmer might imagine soil receiving the dead. The priest might recognize rules of sacred entry. The ruler might hear a warning about crossing another sovereign. The grieving parent might hear that the lost child remains somewhere rather than nowhere. One text can contain all these listeners. The surviving copies also span time and place, which complicates any attempt to reconstruct one official doctrine. Scribes adapted language, selected episodes, and preserved versions suited to particular schools or communities. A line copied in Nippur may not carry exactly the same associations elsewhere. A later Babylonian reader may understand an older Sumerian phrase differently from the student who first memorized it. Tradition changes while pretending to remain ancient. This is not deception. It is how living cultures preserve stories. Each generation receives fragments, rearranges emphasis, and passes the structure onward. The hidden gate survives because it can absorb new meanings. A strange modern theory claims the text records an actual underground complex built by a forgotten civilization. Supporters point to the detailed gates, officials, and chambers as evidence of physical architecture. No excavation has revealed such a structure beneath the Sumerian cities. Archaeologists have uncovered temples, houses, drains, tombs, storage rooms, and deep foundations, but nothing proving a vast subterranean kingdom matching the literary descriptions. The theory remains appealing because the poem feels organized. A completely invented world should not, in popular expectation, contain such practical procedure, yet ancient writers were perfectly capable of creating structured, unseen realms by adapting the institutions surrounding them. Bureaucracy needs no hidden technology. A gatekeeper, court, and system of entry were already familiar features of urban life. The remarkable achievement lies not in recording secret engineering, but in transforming social order into cosmic order. Still, dismissing every unusual detail too quickly would create another mistake. Ancient texts preserve ideas whose original contexts have disappeared. A ritual may vanish while its language survives. A symbol may outlive the ceremony that once made it obvious. The absence of evidence does not supply permission to invent freely, but it also does not restore complete certainty. You remain between confidence and wonder. Scholars continue debating whether the descent stories were performed aloud, enacted ceremonially, copied mainly for education, or used within specific festivals. The rhythm of repetition suggests oral and performative qualities. The staged gates could be dramatic, especially before an audience familiar with every surrendered object. Yet no surviving program tells you exactly where, when, or how such a performance occurred. The poem may have been recited in schools, temples, courts, homes, or several settings. Its emotional force does not depend upon one location. The question of secrecy also remains complicated. Nothing proves that the underworld composition was forbidden knowledge. Multiple copies suggest circulation among scribal communities. Still, literacy itself was limited, and advanced literary training belonged to a relatively small group. The story may not have been secret, yet full access to it required education. That difference matters. A temple hymn can be publicly known while its written form remains restricted to specialists. A ritual can be witnessed by many while its deeper interpretations belong to priests and scribes. Knowledge can be hidden by skill rather than prohibition. The damaged tablet intensifies this impression. Modern readers encounter gaps where ancient listeners may have possessed cultural memory. We mistake our missing context for deliberate concealment because the silence feels purposeful. Perhaps some parts were guarded. Perhaps most were simply familiar. The clay cannot explain which. Another scholarly debate concerns whether the underworld reflects political ideology. Ereshkigal's court resembles a kingdom, and the gates enforce submission to established authority. Inadna's loss of regalia can be read as a warning against invading another ruler's domain. Such a reading would fit societies deeply concerned with sovereignty on tribute, borders, and divine approval. Yet politics alone cannot explain the hunger of the dead, the importance of descendants, or the terror of improper burial. The story reaches beyond royal power into household grief. It is political because death affects kings. It is social because death affects families. It is religious because divine order governs the passage. It is psychological because the story gives shape to fear. No single interpretation deserves exclusive control. You study the wedges again. Their arrangement is exact, but their meaning remains alive. A sign can be translated carefully, yet the world behind it cannot be restored completely. Modern scholarship offers discipline against fantasy. It compares copies, studies grammar, examines archaeology, and tests claims against surviving evidence. Without that work, the tablet would become an empty screen for every modern obsession. Yet scholarship also reveals how much remains unresolved. A damaged word may alter motive. An uncertain object may change ritual meaning. A missing line may conceal the transition between two crucial scenes. Precision leads back to mystery. This is not failure. It is the honest condition of studying deep history. The more carefully you reconstruct the text, the more clearly you see the edges of what cannot be known. The hidden gate may have been a poetic threshold. It may have reflected ritual passage. It may have organized beliefs about burial and ancestral care. It may have warned rulers that no authority travels unchanged into their domain. Perhaps it did all of these things. The tablet is therefore not a map in the ordinary sense. It does not tell you where to dig or how far beneath the ground to search. It maps relationships between power, death, memory, and surrender. Its road runs through human experience. That may be why the story still feels close. Modern people no longer live within Sumerian temples or follow ancient funerary customs, yet they still confront boundaries that cannot be crossed through strength alone. They still fear being forgotten. They still wonder whether identity survives when titles and possessions disappear. They still imagine that death must contain some order, because pure absence remains difficult to accept. The tablet offers no proof of what lies beyond mortality. It offers something older and quieter. It preserves the shape of a question. You stand beneath the museum light while the clay remains silent. Scholars have translated its words, compared its fragments, and placed its signs within history. The final meaning still refuses capture. Perhaps the gate was never meant to be found beneath a particular city. Perhaps it appears wherever the living attempt to imagine the place reached by those who no longer answer. The tablet remembers the threshold. It does not reveal whether the threshold remembers us. The museum has grown quiet enough for the hum of the lights to become audible. Beyond the glass, the broken tablet rests where conservators placed it, surrounded by labels, measurements, and the careful certainty of catalogues, yet the clay itself seems less settled, as though the story pressed into its surface still opens toward a place no display case can contain. You look again at the damaged lines and notice how little material was required to preserve such an enormous idea. A handful of river clay, a cut reed, a trained hand, and a story repeated often enough could hold a road beneath the earth. Cities vanished around it, but the road remained available to one capable of reading the signs. The hidden gate may lie inside that act of reading. A tablet is also a threshold. On one side stands the present, with electric light, climate control, and quiet visitors moving across polished floors. On the other side stands a scribe seated in a warm courtyard, pressing wedges while dust gathers near his ankles. The clay allows neither world to enter the other completely. You cannot ask the scribe what he believed, and he cannot know who studies his work thousands of years later. Still, something crosses, meaning passes through. This makes the tablet resemble Ganza in an unexpected way. Both separate regions while permitting controlled movement. The underworld gate allows travellers under strict conditions. The written tablet allows memory under equally strict conditions. Language must survive. Signs must be copied. The object must escape destruction. A reader must learn how to open it. Most human voices fail somewhere within that sequence. They vanish because no one records them, no copy survives, or no later scholar recognizes their language. The Sumerian text escaped those losses only partially, carrying fractures and silences into the present. Its survival feels almost deliberate. Though archaeology gives more ordinary explanations, clay lasts because it is durable. Especially when fire hardens it. Tablets remain because collapsed buildings bury them. Stories return because fragments happen to be found. Chance becomes the final gatekeeper. One room may be excavated while another remains beneath a road. One fragment may reach a museum while its matching half stays buried under several meters of earth. A sign may survive clearly while the next line breaks away forever. History permits entry unevenly. Records from ancient Mesopotamia confirm that thousands of tablets remain untranslated, unpublished, or only partly studied across collections worldwide. New joins between fragments can still restore passages long considered incomplete. A small piece stored under one catalogue number may belong to another piece identified decades earlier. The hidden story is therefore not closed. Its door opens by millimeters. A scholar notices matching clay color, handwriting thickness and broken edges. Two fragments touch and a missing phrase returns. Another sign changes the meaning of a sentence. A familiar journey acquires a new detail. The past shifts quietly beneath modern understanding. This continuing work has inspired an appealing fringe belief that museums already possess tablets, revealing forgotten technologies, buried chambers, or literal gateways beneath ancient cities. The idea assumes concealment where patient scholarship usually offers a simpler explanation. Collections are vast, expertise is limited, Fragments are difficult. The dramatic secret often turns out to be a shelf waiting for the right reader, yet that reality is fascinating enough. A text can remain hidden in plain sight because no one has recognized which broken pieces belong together. Perhaps the gate beneath the earth survives in that condition. It is not concealed by a priesthood guarding forbidden knowledge. It is concealed by damage, language, time, and the ordinary limits of human attention. Scholars still debate how the underworld traditions changed as Sumerian gave way to Akkadian and later Mesopotamian cultures. Names shifted, stories expanded, and new compositions reworked older images. The lower realm remained recognizable. Yet no version preserved every earlier meaning. Tradition moved like a river. It carried old material forward while changing its course. Ereshkigal remained powerful. Gatekeepers, judges, darkness, dust, and difficult return continued to shape later imagination. New audiences inherited the structure and built new meanings upon it. This process makes the Hidden Gate larger than one culture, not because every later underworld descends directly from Sumer, but because human societies repeatedly imagine death through guarded passages. Caves, rivers, doors, bridges, mountains, and dark roads appear across many traditions. The details differ, yet the boundary remains. The living cannot stop imagining an entrance. Perhaps this happens because death appears both final and strangely incomplete. A body remains visible for a time, though the person no longer answers. Something seems present and absent at once. The mind responds by creating a road. The road explains how someone could be gone without becoming nothing. It also explains why return remains rare. A gate solves both problems by allowing passage while preserving separation. The Sumerian version gives that gate an official structure. It has a name, a keeper, laws, and consequences. The unseen becomes organized enough to feel almost near. You can imagine reaching it. That is the danger of a well-built store. A vague darkness remains abstract. A named gate invites approach. A gatekeeper suggests questions that might be answered correctly. 7 thresholds imply stages that could perhaps be endured. The narrative makes death navigable without making it safe. This balance may explain its endurance. The lower realm is not pure chaos, so thought can enter it, yet its laws remain stronger than courage, rank, beauty, and divine pride. The story offers order without reassurance. You step closer to the glass. The tablet's surface shows fingerprints of making, though not necessarily literal prints. Every wedge records pressure, angle, and intention. The scribe's body remains absent, but his movement survives. A hand once travelled across this clay. That hand belonged to someone who also faced mortality. Perhaps he had buried relatives. Perhaps he had poured water into the ground. Perhaps he copied the underworld story as a school assignment while thinking about supper. Ancient scribes were still people. They grew tired, made errors, worried about status, and lived among royal families. The grandeur of the text does not remove the ordinary life behind it. This ordinary life makes the mystery stronger. The gate was imagined by people who bought grain, repaired roofs, complained about heat, and listened for footsteps at night. They did not live inside constant myth. They used myth to approach what ordinary language could not hold. Death required another vocabulary. A keeper could represent finality. 7 gates could represent surrender. A queen could represent permanence. Judges could represent the irreversible sentence of mortality. Dust could represent the fading of human connection. These meanings do not erase the possibility that ancient audiences pictured a real realm below. Symbol and belief can occupy the same space. A person may understand a grave physically while also treating it as a sacred threshold. The tablet does not ask you to choose one reading. It allows uncertainty to remain active. You leave the display and walk toward the museum exit. Your reflection moves across dark cases filled with bowls, seals, figurines, and tools once handled in vanished homes. Each object crossed its own hidden gate from use into burial, then from burial into discovery. Nothing here followed a simple path. A cup became an offering. A wall became a ruin. A school exercise became evidence. A story became mystery. Outside, evening air touches your face, traffic passes along wet pavement, and windows glow across the street. The modern city seems far removed from mud brick temples, yet foundations disappear beneath every building. The ground remains layered. Pipes, tunnels, graves, ruins, soil, and older roads lie below ordinary movement. People cross these hidden depths while thinking about work, food, family, and sleep. The underworld has always been imagined beneath daily life for a reason. It waits close to everything. You may never find a physical gate marked by ancient signs. No excavation may reveal a staircase descending into Ereshkigal's court. The tablet gives no reliable coordinates, and honest history must admit that. Still, the gate exists within the structure of the story. It appears wherever identity loses its protection. It appears wherever memory struggles against disappearance. It appears wherever the living stand near the dead and wonder whether absence has a destination. The tablet does not answer what lies beyond. It teaches you how ancient people approach the question. They approached through clay, ritual, family duty, and carefully ordered imagination. They placed a keeper at the boundary because some doors should not open casually. They placed a queen below because death required authority. They placed judges there because finality feels like a verdict. Perhaps the hidden gate is not hidden beneath one field or temple. Perhaps it is hidden beneath every culture, waiting inside the stories people tell when someone does not return. The museum lights continue shining over the tablet. The signs remain still. The road remains open only in thought. Wind down. Now the city outside grows softer, and the ancient clay recedes into a warm pool of light. You no longer need to stand beside the glass or follow the dark road beneath the earth. The gate can remain closed, guarded by the patient keeper and the laws of a world that belongs only to story, memory, and distant belief. Let the temple walls fade into evening mist. Let the canals quiet beneath a pale moon, while reeds move gently along the banks. The scribes have set down their reeds. The lamps in the school have gone dark, and the last lines of wet clay rest safely upon a wooden shelf. Nothing asks you to descend. The judges remain in their silent chamber. Far below the fields and sleeping houses, Ereshkigal sits beyond every threshold, not watching you, but holding her place within an ancient imagination that has travelled farther than its makers ever dreamed. You remain above. You feel the air around you, the surface beneath you, and the calm rhythm of your own breathing. These ordinary sensations belong to the living world, where water still moves, bread still warms, and names are spoken by people who care. Perhaps that is enough for tonight. The tablet preserves no final answer, only a path of question shaped into clay. It suggests that people long ago looked into darkness and tried to give it structure. They named the gate because naming made fear easier to hold. You may let that name drift away now. The road closes softly. Dust settles across the threshold. The keeper lowers his gaze, and the ancient city disappears beneath quiet stars. Somewhere, water touches the river bank. Somewhere, a lamp is extinguished. Somewhere, a remembered name remains warm for one more night. And perhaps, beneath all the silence, the story is not yet complete. Good night,